Chapter 528. She left Qiguanrang behind in Jiaoping district. She had the final say in everything. At his command, Dabai sprinted off into the distance, taking the lead as fast as he could. The Tsingyi army in Maolin district lost their morale. They fled pathetically and were utterly defeated. After they ran for a distance, a few chieftains began to organize their men. Naturally, they moved slowly. When they managed to organize more than half of the defeated soldiers, they would face a new disaster. A small chieftain spat on the ground and said unhappily, "What do you mean by Xiangyang district is empty of troops? F***ck. Does this look like it's empty of troops? It's harder to chew than a bone. Not only is it hard to chew, but it's also hard to chew. We suffered a huge loss this time." The accomplice beside him sat on the ground and wiped his face with both hands. He said fiercely, "We'll remember this today. We'll make those people in Xiangyang district pay the price in the future. They made us suffer such a huge loss. We can't let it go easily." There were also some who looked into the distance dejectedly. No one knew what they were thinking. In the distance, the Tsingyi army gathered in twos and threes. Each of them was hunchbacked and had ashen faces. They looked like defeated roosters. There was no valiant and high-spirited aura on them. It made people feel unhappy and secretly scolded them for being a bunch of good-for-nothings. Some of the small chieftains were very unhappy with these soldiers who swayed according to the situation. It was just a defeat. Was there a need to be like this? Weren't they still alive? As long as they were alive, there would be a day when they would make a comeback. These useless people ran away faster than anyone else when they saw that the situation was not good. Now we'll organize our men and return to Maolin district first before making plans. They originally wanted to take advantage of the situation. Who knew that not only did they not take advantage of the situation, they were also counterattacked. It was really embarrassing. They could not covet the fat piece of meat that was Xiangyang district. Now they had to bring their men back first to prevent the rear from being empty for too long. The leader of the Tsingyi army then remembered that there was a shortage of manpower in his backyard. However, he was not very worried. Anyway, Maolin district had been exploited cleanly. There was no profit to be reaped. The nearby Tsingyi army did not even look at it. Why would they covet it? However, they all forgot that the other Tsingyi army would indeed not covet it. However, it did not mean that Jiang Pengji was not tempted. Now, the 4 districts of Fengyi district were in her hands. She was now the district magistrate of Xiangyang district in name, but in reality, she was the chief of Fengyi district. Not to mention Dongqing, even in other countries, was there a county chief younger than her. Jiang Pengji was completely confident that within a year, Fengyi County would be revitalized and prosperous once again. After Fengyi district was settled, the next step would be the entire Wanzhou. The members of the Tsingyi army who had gathered were completely unaware of the impending danger. They sat on the ground in twos and threes, their stomachs rumbling with hunger. The weapons in their hands had already been abandoned when they escaped. Hungry and tired, many of them simply found a place to sleep. Looking at the disorderly Tsingyi army, a few leaders were so angry that their faces and necks turned red. They wished they could whip these people to wake them up. There are actually no pursuers coming from Xiangyang district. A small leader opened his mouth in surprise. The other person was slightly more knowledgeable and replied, "They didn't go out of the city to pursue them. It's most likely because there aren't enough people in the city to hold them back." The leader said, Tsmen, had in. It's hard to deal with them when they don't have enough men. What would happen if they had enough men? Don't boost others' morale and belittle your own. Maybe they think there's no need to chase. Even if they don't have enough men in the city, can you break in? His companion was speechless. They looked at each other in silence, helplessness in their eyes. It was a good thing that the enemy did not chase after them. Tsingyi army had more time to organize their men. Just as they heaved a sigh of relief, a member of the Tsingyi army scrambled over to report. "General, the enemy is coming from afar." What? The enemy was chasing after them? The leaders of the Tsingyi army were shocked. One of them, a strong man with a dark face, asked, "Enemy? How many?" The pitiful member of the Tsingyi army stuttered, "The enemy is moving very fast. We can't be sure of their numbers." Useless. What's the use of your eyes? The strong man with a dark face angrily grabbed the man's collar. He lifted him up and threw him on the ground. The member of the Tsing-Yi army rolled twice in the mud. He fell until he was dizzy and saw stars. "I'll go take a look." The member of the Tsing-Yi army snorted. He strode to the place where he could see the enemy. He didn't know if he didn't see, but he was shocked when he saw. Indeed, as the member of the Tsing-Yi army said, the enemy was moving very fast. They were only a few hundred meters away from them. Behind them, there was a thick cloud of dust. It was like the sound of horse hooves. It was impossible to determine the size of the troops chasing after them. However, there were hundreds of enemies running out from the cloud of dust. There were at least 3,000 pursuers. The other side had 3,000 victorious troops, valiant and high-spirited. Although their side still had nearly 4,000 men, they were all exhausted and had no battle experience at all. If the two sides were to clash, they would have no chance of victory. They could only experience the feeling of being utterly defeated once again. At that moment, the leaders couldn't help but want to retreat. They wanted to escape as soon as possible. As long as there's life, there's hope. As for the members of the Tsing-Yi army on the ground, what did their lives have to do with them? On the other side, Jiang Pengji was leading 500 people to charge forward. The remaining 300 people came out in batches from the cloud of dust. She made use of this camp to create the illusion of a large army chasing after them. In reality, she only got a few soldiers to chop a few trees. Then she dragged the branches and ran back and forth on the ground, raising a thick cloud of dust. There were many flaws in this plan, but it could deceive the Tsing-Yi army for a while. The audience in the streaming room saw that she was so cunning. They all ridiculed her. De Gussel's straw shoes. By the way, when you used this plan to deceive people, did you think about Lord Zhongfei's feelings? Ergu Wu Dideo. Sigh, it's rare for Lord Zhongfei to be smart for once. His plan was plagiarized by the streamer. I'm upset. Of course, the crux of the problem was not the plan, but the deception. As long as they were deceived, based on their dispirited mentality after suffering a defeat, the possibility of them fighting again was extremely small. Even if they fought, their combat power was not enough. Jiang Pengji was completely confident that she could lead 700 to 800 people to surround and annihilate the 3,000 to 4,000 members of the Tsing-Yi army. The pursuers are here. Everyone get up. The pursuers are here. Run away quickly. There were loud shouts. Many members of the Tsing-Yi army woke up from their sleep. When they heard that there were pursuers, their bodies had already reacted one step ahead of their minds. Run. The further the better. Most of the members of the Tsing-Yi army were running blindly. One could imagine how little resistance Jiang Pengji encountered. White excitedly increased its speed. The Tsing-Yi army was just a tired and defeated army. How could they outrun it? Some members of the Tsing-Yi army saw that they could not escape, so they simply turned around and wanted to fight to the death. They did not expect that they could not even get close to it. White raised its front hooves high and rewarded them with a hoof. It hit their chests. They heard the sound of bones breaking. One by one, they fell to the ground, spitting out blood and breathing weakly. Jiang Pengji waved the sharp spear in her hand. Her moves were very simple. Every move and style was bound to reap lives. Wherever White passed, the person and the horse cooperated well with each other. Chapter 529. Mr. Qiguan, we've really tried our best. The troops who were charging behind Jiang Pengji watched as their lord left in a cloud of dust. They could only eat dirt at the back. One could imagine the despair in their hearts. Qiguan Rang was left behind in Jiaoping district. He secretly instructed many troops to keep a close eye on their lord and not let her be too reckless. Even a few strategists could not stop their lord. How could a group of small soldiers like them keep a close eye on her? Killing could make people lose all rationality. The troops behind them were in high spirits. Only a few hundred of them could chase after thousands of members of the Tsing-Yi army and kill them. The latter only cared about fleeing in all directions. They could not organize any effective defense. No matter how the leaders threatened them, the members of the Tsing-Yi army only cared about running for their lives. Jiang Pengji looked at their performance and snorted contemptuously. Her hands did not stop moving. After killing for a while, there were hundreds of corpses along the way. White's fur was already scarlet. Jiang Pengji then shouted loudly. Maolin district has already been conquered. You'll be throwing your lives away if you run back. Those who surrender will not be killed. Those who resist will be killed without mercy. What? Maolin district has already been conquered? Under the influence of the environment, the leaders of the Tsing-Yi army also knew that the situation was hopeless. If they did not escape, they would die. They broke into a run, but they did not expect that their old nest had already been destroyed. They were still thinking of going back to regroup and take revenge in the future. Now that they had lost their territory and foundation, how could they make a comeback? Disheartened, many members of the Tsing-Yi army gave up on escaping and resisting. There were still some who chose to continue struggling. At that moment, the members of the Tsing-Yi army who were running at the front heard a faint battle cry. They took a closer look and saw that the enemy troops were also charging towards them. There was a blockade in front and pursuers behind. The members of the Tsing-Yi army could not escape even if they had wings. In the blink of an eye, a glaring silver light flashed before their eyes. There was only a red bloodstain left between their brows. Fresh blood flowed out from the wound. Their bodies fell forward due to inertia. Then they fell to the ground with a loud bang. They fell on the muddy grass with a dull thud. Kill! Li Yun's words were concise and comprehensive. His voice was low and stern, causing one to involuntarily feel invigorated and have goosebumps. The audience in the live streaming room had a wider field of vision. From afar, they could see the Tsing-Yi army's abnormal movements in front of them. Their fleeing formation was in a mess, as if they were hindered by something. They zoomed in to take a look. What the F***CK? That white horse with a silver spear. Isn't that Han Mei? Tian monthly tickets break 2,000. Ah, super tacit understanding. My husband is coming. Wu Wei Qigong. That's too much. Han Mei's husband is so handsome that I can't close my legs. Han Mei on the battlefield can't get enough of him. Gossipy since I was young. That's right, that's right. Han Mei on the battlefield is like a Prince Charming. The screen is a little dirty. Let me lick it. No, speaking of which, why am I, a man, being smitten with another man here? Oh no, I feel like I'm done for. Yuan shrimp sticks. You vulgar people, am I the only one who noticed that Han Mei's horse doesn't have a stirrup? Herbivorous numbers. I despise the person above. We are vulgar, aren't you filthy? It's filthy. Ye Cheng Zhou. The newbie doesn't understand what's the joke about not having a stirrup. Tian Ling Feng. Come, I'll tell you what the joke is. Without a stirrup, it's good to ride a horse with a strong waist. You know. It was a hot-blooded and serious scene. The audience in the streaming room was still licking Jiang Pengji's heroic figure a second ago. In the next moment, the scene changed and they were infatuated with Li Yun. Not only were they infatuated, they were even driving in the streaming room. Keske, this group of fickle goblins. Jiang Pengji and Li Yun obviously didn't communicate with each other. The pincer attack was just a coincidence. The Tsing-Yi army's luck was too bad. She only brought 800 elites with her, and Li Yun didn't have many men on his side either. The two of them added up to less than 1,500 men. However, the morale of the troops on both sides was like a rainbow. Even though they were on a long journey, under the influence and motivation of the battlefield's murderous atmosphere, everyone felt that their bodies had inexhaustible energy. Li Yun was fighting for a while when he noticed Jiang Pengji and her men chasing after the Tsing-Yi army. He was overjoyed. The Lord is just ahead. Let's go and support her. Meng Hun and Su Ke stayed behind in Maolin district to prevent other forces from launching a sneak attack. Li Yun and Jiang Nongqin led a few hundred men to prepare for a sneak attack on the Tsing-Yi army's rear. However, they didn't expect their timing to be so coincidental. They just happened to bump into the Tsing-Yi army fleeing in all directions. Jiang Nongqin said in a hoarse voice, "Generals and soldiers, follow me to attack and support the Lord." Jiang Nongqin learned from Jiang Pengji and Meng Hun. She dismounted from her horse and used a short weapon, but she preferred to use a long spear when fighting on a horse. Due to the limitation of her strength, she also walked lightly and nimbly. She moved as soon as she touched the ground. As a result, the requirement of aiming the spear was stricter. Only by killing with one blow would her chances of survival on the battlefield be higher. Li Yun and Jiang Nongqin had fought several times. They had a tacit understanding. Both of them coordinated with each other and their lethality was stronger. He ordered the horse under him to gallop and turned his body to avoid the sneak arrows. Looks like Xiangyang District and Maolin District are safe. Jiang Nongqin responded with a hum and didn't say anything else. Li Yun didn't mind her coldness, and the battlefield wasn't suitable for frequent communication. At this moment, he was deeply moved by the capabilities of the few masters. They really never suffered losses no matter where they went. Maolin District almost turned out in full force. Even so, they didn't gain any advantage in Xiangyang District. Instead, they were utterly defeated and chased by their lord's troops. Li Yun's face darkened. Not a trace of his usual adorable self could be seen. He held the silver spear in his hand steadily, killing people accurately and swiftly. There were hundreds of troops following behind him. Most of them were male, but there were also female troops. Although the overall quality of women couldn't be compared to that of men, every group had its advantages and disadvantages. The female troops that accompanied him were the cream of the crop. Their stamina and willpower were exceptionally strong. They didn't complain or show any signs of frailty as they hurried on their journey, causing people to involuntarily overlook their gender. Not to mention Li Yun, who was leading the troops. Even the other male troops and even the female troops themselves slowly overlooked this point. Kill. When a group of hungry wild wolves charged into a herd of panicking sheep, what would it look like? The Tsing-Yi army saw that they had nowhere to run, so they could only brace themselves and face the enemy head-on. But how could they defeat the enemy who had an imposing aura? They were utterly defeated the moment they met face to face. Zhang Pengji shouted again, "Those who surrender will not be killed, those who don't surrender will be killed without mercy." When she realized that Li Yun had led his troops over, Zhang Pengji knew that she had already occupied the entire Fengyi district. But apart from Xiangyang district, the other three districts were almost completely devoured by the Tsing-Yi army. The people had all left their homes. This meant that when Zhang Pengji rebuilt the three districts, she would have no one to use. Rather than killing the Tsing-Yi army in front of her, she might as well keep them as laborers. Chapter 530. Subordinate Li Yun greets my lord. Subordinate Jiang Nongqin greets my lord. After clearing the battlefield and capturing the captives, Li Yun and Jiang Nongqin led their respective horses to Zhang Pengji and half-knelt to pay their respects. Zhang Pengji leaned against a withered tree on the open ground and held a weed in her mouth. She said, "Get up, sit down and rest." Li Yun was startled. Jiang Nongqin sat beside Zhang Pengji with a cold face. "Nongqin is indeed cuter. Hanmei, you are so restrained. It doesn't feel like you are your usual self." She was a cute little angel on a daily basis and a cold and aloof Prince Charming on the battlefield. That was the most attractive contrast. There was no need to be restrained. She did not care about that. Li Yun looked slightly embarrassed. He simply found a place to sit down and placed the silver spear in his hand beside him. He asked, "Why are you here, my lord?" Zhang Pengji said, "Naturally, I am here in the same way you are here. How can a place like Jiaoping District be difficult for me?" Li Yun scratched his head and said shyly, "My lord is dignified and wise. The Tsing-Yi army is naturally no match for you." Jiang Nongqin had a quiet personality. She usually listened quietly. Unless she really had an opinion, she would not speak up easily. Therefore, she did not join the conversation. Zhang Pengji turned her head and asked Jiang Nongqin, "How are the results of your attack on Maolin District?" The latter was stunned for a moment. She reacted after a while and said, "The Tsing-Yi army has few guards in Maolin District. Officer Meng is experienced in battles. Mr. Su is resourceful. Therefore, it did not take long for us to take over Maolin District. The generals and soldiers fought bravely. Other than 20 people who were lightly injured, 6 were seriously injured, and 8 were killed in battle. The rest of the soldiers were safe and sound. The 6 seriously injured soldiers were an accident. If they had not let their guard down, at most one would have been slightly injured. As for the 8 who died in battle, they were shot by the enemy's stray arrows at the beginning of the sneak attack on the city. They died of untreated wounds. It was already very proud to have such an outcome in a sneak attack on the city. Not to mention that there were many inexperienced new soldiers among them. There were also female soldiers who were purely holding them back in the eyes of others. Of course, only the soldiers participating in the battle could judge whether or not they were holding them back. Outsiders had no right or qualification to comment. Take care of the injured soldiers, and let the souls of the fallen warriors return to their homeland. Have their corpses been properly disposed of? Although the casualties were small, they were still there. The dead could not be resurrected, but she could make up for the families of the living and the dead. It was a form of comfort and compensation. Jiang Nongqin secretly glanced at Li Yun. His expression was natural and he was not displeased by Jiang Pengji's cold treatment. She calmed down and continued, "Rest assured, my lord. The corpses of the soldiers have all been collected. Those that can be buried have already been buried." The audience in the streaming room were mostly fans of Li Yun's looks or true love. The little angel was treated coldly by the streamer and was inexplicably unhappy. Kneeling begging for monthly tickets. "Hey, host, did you see our little angel Han Mei's longing eyes? Look at him. Otherwise we'll now. Poor little angel, don't panic. Come to my arms. I'll give you a loving hug." Dede isape. Is this the post-battle summary report? Our little angel Han Mei knows it too. The streamer can't favor one and discriminate against the other. Shanglai Mai. Don't panic. Han Mei is not a narrow-minded person. Why would he feel wronged? Jiang Pengji unintentionally glanced at the bullet screen and was secretly amused. She continued to ask Nongqin about the arrangements in Maolin district and sent a bullet screen to explain so that Han Mei's fan club would not continue to lash out at her and say that she bullied their husband. Host V. Han Mei is the deputy captain of the Vanguard Battalion. Nongqin is the captain of the female battalion. Naturally, I can't ask about the situation without Nongqin's permission. Jiang Pengji liked to do whatever she wanted, but it did not mean that she would let her guard down when it came to certain matters of principle. The military camp was a place with clear hierarchy and strict discipline. Her attitude would affect their status among the soldiers. If she treated Jiang Nongqin coldly, it would give the soldiers the misconception that she, the captain, was inferior to the deputy captain. Unintentionally, it would weaken Nongqin's prestige among the soldiers. Even if the weakening was very slight, Jiang Pengji did not want that to happen. Alright, since the streamer had explained, the audience in the streaming room also expressed their understanding. They turned around and showered gifts. The accompanying comments were, "Touch my little angel. Little angel is not sad. Come over and let auntie rub you," making Jiang Pengji feel helpless. Jiang Pengji then asked about the general situation in Maolin district. After all, it had to be rebuilt after the war. How could a place that had been ravaged by locusts like the Tsing-Yi army be prosperous? Jiang Pengji still used Xiangyang district as her base camp, but her influence had already spread to the whole of Fengyi County. Jiang Nongqin was a careful person. She did not expect Jiang Pengji to ask her, but she had made all the necessary preparations. Since the Lord valued her, she would naturally tell her everything she knew. She did not hold back and did not leave anything out. Jiang Pengji's brows furrowed imperceptibly. If the financial situation of the three districts was ranked, Chungan district was the poorest, followed by Maolin district, and Jiaoping district was in the best condition. However, the situation of population loss in the three districts was similar. It was not to say that 9 out of 10 houses were empty, but it was sparsely populated. Forget it, rebuilding is not something that can be done in a day. Although there are fewer people, it is not a ghost town. The captives of the Tsing-Yi army can be used as laborers, which can relieve a lot of pressure. I'll ask Xiao Yu and the rest to put up notices to recruit laborers and slowly rebuild the three districts. There were benefits to having fewer people. Many houses and lands had become ownerless. She could use them to her heart's content to seek benefits. The larger Jiang Pengji's territory was, the stronger her military force was. In the eyes of outsiders, her place was a paradise in a chaotic world. When the time came, it was unknown how many people and wealthy merchants would be attracted to seek refuge. Well, think about the houses in Xiangyang district. The prices had gone from being worthless to increasing every day. Recently, wealthy merchants had sent their servants to inquire. The land and house deeds were all in Jiang Pengji's hands. She was still unwilling to let them go. It was too much of a loss to sell them now. When Fengyi County was completely stabilized, these houses could only be sold at the proper price. However, her military force was only about 10,000 people. If they were spread out and scattered across the 4 districts, it was really a stretch. It was imperative to recruit soldiers and expand the military force. During the early stages of rebuilding, It was probably the most dangerous time for Jiang Pengji's power. The territory was too big and the military force was too scattered. If they were caught by the enemy, they might be overturned. However, she believed that her strategists were smart people. Even if she did not send any instructions, they would know what to do during this period of time. Facts prove that whether it was Jiaoping District's Qiguanrang, Chenggan District's Wei Ci, or Maolin District's Suku, they were all great teammates. Having just conquered the 3 districts, the 3 of them coincidentally recruited usable laborers. On the other hand, they had to think of a way to make the 1,000 or 2,000 troops look like 10,000 people. They had to strengthen the patrols and throw smoke bombs to confuse the possible enemies so that they would not dare to act rashly. Xiangyang District had won 2 consecutive battles, which could more or less deter the enemies who coveted it. Chapter 531. The changes in power in Fengyi County did not attract much attention. Apart from the Tsing-Yi army that suffered heavy losses and the Red Lotus group that fought the Tsing-Yi army to death, the north was still quiet. On the contrary, the flames of war in the south had already ignited and caused a chain reaction. Prince Changshou had sent the corpse of Lu Shi's mistress, Lu Huan, to Chongzhou. His original intention was to use this to rope Lu Shi in and have him stand on the same side as himself. Who knew that Lu Shi was indifferent? After receiving the coffin of his mistress, he did not even make a sound. Lu Shi's heartless and indifferent reaction made Prince Changshou furious. Not only did the hatred in his heart deepen, but he also remembered Lu Shi. However, he could not do anything to Lu Shi for the time being. He could only wait for him to ascend the throne before settling the score. However, even though Prince Changshou schemed to drive a wedge between the emperor and Huang Song, making Huang Song withdraw from the front line and become the district magistrate of Diang District, he still could not successfully take over Qinzhou. He also could not pull his brother, the emperor, down from the throne. Why did this happen? It was because his chief strategist had jumped ship. Speaking of this, one had to mention that Prince Changshou became increasingly arrogant and exposed his true nature. Since the last time Lu Shi secretly sent someone to send a letter to Prince Changshou, letting him know that Lu Huan, Lu Shi's daughter, was Prince Changshou's biological daughter, he lost his composure and embarrassed his chief strategist. After that, when the war came to a stalemate, Prince Changshou thought that the strategist was incompetent and repeatedly embarrassed him. Not only that, when the military generals questioned the correctness of the strategist's strategy, Prince Changshou also added insult to injury. Thus, Prince Changshou completely offended the capable strategist in his camp. It was all right to offend an ordinary person. Anyway, ordinary people were not capable, so Prince Changshou was not afraid. However, he offended a petty and vengeful strategist. The key was that the strategist really had a brain, so it was awkward. Before the strategist jumped ship, he even schemed against Prince Changshou, causing him to make a major mistake in the battle to attack Qinzhou. His troops were severely depleted and his vitality was severely damaged. It was precisely because of this that the forces in Qinzhou who were in imminent danger were saved, allowing them to take a breather and counterattack. However, the strategist was smart. He did not expose himself before he did something bad and pushed the blame to others. Successfully shifting the blame to Prince Changshou, the strategist jumped ship and left. Prince Changshou was too ashamed to vent his anger on him. The facts proved that the strategist's approach was correct. Prince Changshou's front line failed. He was about to break through Qinzhou's defense line and deploy his troops to the new capital, but he made a huge mistake, causing half of his elite troops to be devoured by Qinzhou, causing him to suffer a great loss. In this short period of time, he could only look at Qinzhou helplessly, unable to deal a devastating blow to Qinzhou. After losing the battle, Prince Changshou thought of this adorable strategist and randomly sent a small soldier to call him over. The tent was empty. The strategist had already packed his bags and left. Before he left, he even left a letter. The content of the letter was naturally not something like, "I'm leaving, you heartless man. You've betrayed my trust, I don't want to be with you anymore," or something like that. Instead, it was a tearful complaint about his sick mother at home and that she would die soon. As a filial son, he wanted to go home to serve his mother and send her off. Reading this letter that was filled with sorrow and filial piety, Prince Changshou could not vent his anger no matter how angry he was, not to mention that he was the one in the wrong. He treated the strategist coldly and did not even know that the strategist's mother was seriously ill. Now that the strategist had left to be filial to his mother, Prince Changsho felt that he should send him some generous gifts to express his sincerity. At this moment, Prince Changsho still did not know that his strategist had not left temporarily. He had gone far away. Even his defeat at the front line was caused by the strategist. It was fine if he did not know the truth, but when he knew, he would probably have the urge to eat him alive. Prince Changsho did not think of chasing him back. Firstly, he would lose face. After losing the battle, he hurriedly went to find the strategist he had been cold to for a long time, as if he could not leave him. How could he put his face? Secondly, he had a lot of talents under him. Did he lack this one? Naturally, he did not lack one. Therefore, it was fine for him to be filial to his mother. When he returned after the filial piety, his status would be even lower. Prince Changsho casually threw the bamboo slip letter aside, then ordered his men to summon the other strategists to prepare to discuss the follow-up matters. What about the strategist who had quietly left for 3 days? He had already left with his page boy and half a carriage of books. These books were all copied by him using the bamboo paper provided by Prince Changsho. Although it was only half a carriage and could only hold 1 or 2 boxes, if it was made into bamboo slips, it would probably not even be enough to fill 20 carriages. Although Prince Changsho was not a good person, when he was good to people, he was really good. Knowing that this chief strategist liked to read, he tried his best to cater to his interests and gave him all kinds of precious books. This strategist also saw through Prince Changsho's nature. He knew that he would not be under Prince Changsho for long, so wouldn't he copy as much as he could? The page boy who was driving the carriage asked, "Sir, where are we going now?" The strategist studied in the carriage and said casually, "Anywhere is fine, but not in the south." The south was the battlefield between Prince Changsho and the Dongqing royal family. Now that Prince Changsho's vitality was greatly damaged, his original advantage was reduced to dust, causing the two forces to return to the starting line. They still had a lot to grind. If he continued to stay in the south, what if he accidentally encountered Prince Changsho's forces? Yes, the strategist's so-called old mother is seriously ill, was just an excuse. In fact, he did not even know who his biological mother was. He grew up with the help of his teachers. According to his teachers, his biological mother might be a prostitute, because he was found in that place. The swaddling clothes he was wrapped in were considered rich, unlike a child from a poor family. However, this was old history that did not need to be investigated. The strategist did not care at all. The page boy had a bitter face. He said while driving the carriage, "There has to be a place. We can't just run away in fear, can we? The world is so chaotic now. I heard that after Nanxing was destroyed, it was a mess. The feudal lords rose and Dongqing was also in chaos. It's easy to get into trouble if you run around blindly." The strategist lifted the curtain impatiently and said with a frown, "In the past, I've always said that I'm long-winded and meddlesome. Now that it's your turn to be in charge, why are you blaming me? I'll let you make the decision. You can run wherever you want to run?" The page boy's face grew bitter. How could there be such a stubborn and difficult teacher? After thinking for a while, he said, "Sir, didn't you admire that person called Huang? I heard that he was demoted to Deyong District. I remember that Deyong District is in Maoda County of Haozhou. It's close to the north, far away from the center of the war in the south and out of reach of the war in the north. Let's go there." The strategist rolled the book in his hand and gently knocked the back of the page boy's head. Chapter 532. This little boy servant of his was really petty. When the strategist was working for Prince Changsho's camp, he came up with a plan to trick Huang Song. Huang Song was probably extremely resentful towards this black pot that fell from the sky. If Huang Song knew that it was his idea and that he was the one who instigated Prince Changsho, how could he not bear a grudge? How was this going to seek refuge? It was clearly courting death. Although it was a critical remark, there was a hint of joy and amusement in his tone. One could tell that he was not angry at the boy servant's pettiness. The boy servant naturally understood his master's temper. He was even more certain that the other party would not be angry because of this and would even be eager to try. He said, "Sir, your strategy is unparalleled. If that Huang something is really as good as you say, he won't blame you." The strategist clicked his tongue and immediately entered the carriage. He leaned against the table and spoke lazily. "Up to you." The boy servant smiled and said, "All right, let's go to Deyong District now." Daily pitting master and servant against each other, January 1st, completed. Nowadays, the world was unstable and the people's hearts were in chaos. The knowledgeable people in the world were not optimistic about the Dongqing royal family or Prince Changsho. No matter who won, they would not be able to restore light to this chaotic world. They also did not have the ability or magnanimity to set things right. Since the fall of the Great Xia dynasty, the world was divided into 5 countries. The 5 countries had been established for a short period of time. Those celebrities could not be said to be patriotic at all. Since the world was muddy and unclear, a new world would be created and light would be restored. In this world, there were countless people who chased after fame and profit. As long as there was profit to be made, there would naturally be no shortage of people who chased after it. Some people wanted to support a wise ruler and leave his name in the annals of history, a good name that would last for 10,000 years. This strategist was no exception. Before Prince Changsho revealed his true nature, he indeed had the appearance of a wise ruler. To put it bluntly, he was good at acting. In addition, he was Prince Changsho of the Dongqing royal family. He had a fertile and vast fief and a strong army. He had a very strong capital to fight for the world. However, he was not a patient person and his acting skills were not refined to perfection. It did not take long before he revealed all his flaws. After seeing this person's true colors, the strategist did not want to assist such a terrible person. A good bird chose a tree to rest in and a virtuous minister chose a master to serve. If he could meet a suitable master, he would naturally do his best. If he met an unsuitable one, he would jump ship as soon as possible and find a suitable one. However, since they had worked together for a while, the strategist did not want to go against his old master for the time being. Under the setting sun, the carriage slowly drove toward Deyong district. He wanted to see if this capable Huang Song was really capable and how broad-minded he was. He cherished his life but liked to play with it. The boy servant knew his temperament very well. Otherwise, he would not have suggested that the two of them go to Deyong district. The further north they went, the more refugees there were. Barren fields, starving people, dilapidated ruins. Everything impacted the duo's eyes. However, the strategist had seen many things, and he had a cold personality, so he did not reveal any complicated expressions. On the other hand, the errand boy was still somewhat innocent and kind. When he saw the numb refugees or the crying children, he sighed with emotion. However, he remembered his identity and did not give them any food or money. In fact, he did not even stay for long. When one was outside and the world was so chaotic, kindness sometimes could not be exchanged for gratitude. It might even lead to killing intent. For safety's sake, the errand boy used a skinny old horse to drive the carriage. He changed his clothes into old clothes with many patches, and the carriage that the strategist sat in was also changed into a dusty old carriage. However, the interior of the carriage was more comfortable and clean. With such a combination, as long as they did not encounter refugees who were driven to a dead end, they would generally be fine. The strategist merely raised his eyebrows at this arrangement and did not comment on it. The errand boy took care of his daily life and had always been reliable and considerate. He washed, cooked, sewed, drove, repaired, and survived in the wild. As long as he had this little errand boy with him, he did not have to worry about his life being uncomfortable. Even if he was thrown on an uninhabited deserted island, he would still be able to live comfortably. Sir, in this current world, when do you think it will be peaceful? The errand boy was still in his 20s. His hair was tied up in a small bun. Coupled with his chubby little face, he looked even younger. The strategist answered without raising his head. I'm not a god. How would I know these things? The errand boy said, but aren't you determined to assist a wise ruler to help the common people in the world? The person you chose should be able to do this. The strategist bought this errand boy from a starving refugee for only 12 copper coins. It was originally just a moment of kindness, but he did not expect the errand boy to have a pure heart and was very grateful to others. The strategist simply raised him as a younger brother. However, it seemed that he had raised him too much, causing the errand boy to have extra confidence and admiration for him. Who knows? Maybe a few years, maybe a few decades. Maybe when I'm in the coffin, the world will still be chaotic. The carriage was pulled by an old horse, so it naturally could not be fast. They could only travel slowly. After traveling for a few days, the master and servant ordered a big bowl of tea in a shabby tea house. Some tea leaves floated on the muddy water, and the taste of the tea was quite touching. However, the strategist drank it without a frown. Instead, the errand boy complained that he had been wronged. The master and servant dressed low-key, looking like a poor family. While they were drinking tea, they heard someone talking about Fungi County. Have you heard that the damned Tsing-Yi bastards in Fungi County have been chased out? Who is so powerful? I heard that even the county chief of Fungi County wagged his tail at the Tsing-Yi army. Someone actually chased them out. I heard that it's the district magistrate of Xiangyang County, called Lu Shi. I heard that Xiangyang County was once the territory of the Tsing-Yi army. But didn't the government make Lu Shi a district magistrate? Last year, he directly led his men to beat up the bastards in Xiangyang County, and even incorporated them into his army. The north suffered from the torment of the Tsing-Yi army and the Red Lotus group. Many people left their homes and fled to the south. Although there was also a war in the south, they still cared about their reputation and would not be as reckless and violent as the two bandits. Coincidentally, there were also refugees who escaped from Fungi County in the tea house. When they heard the news about their hometown, they could not help but ask. Then, what about Chang'an District? I escaped from Chang'an District. Were the Tsing-Yi bastards there also beaten up? The person who told the news said, they have already been beaten up. Chang'an District has now been taken back by the district magistrate Lu Shi. The commoner was overjoyed when he heard that, but he immediately hesitated. It was not easy for him to escape from Chang'an District. Who knew what would happen in the future? If he went back rashly, he might even lose his life. Someone saw through his thoughts and said, Tisk, you're hesitating. I want to go there and find a job. Unfortunately, my wife and I don't allow it. They say it's a long journey and it would be bad if something happens to me on the way. They insist on stopping me from going. Why? It's good to stay here. Although this place was poor, at least there was no war. At most, the place was a little remote and life was a little tough. The person looked around and asked the people who heard the news, do you know what kind of place Xiangyang County is? Chapter 533. Your information is really bad. Xiangyang District is a paradise. I heard that the merchants who went there to do business have returned. Many people want to move their families there. I heard that the land there is neat and tidy. It's clean even on rainy days. The houses are like heavenly palaces. The man described it in poor language, and what he said was what he had heard from the merchants. When Fengyi County was still in the hands of the Tsing-Yi army, the merchants still dared to do business in Xiangyang District. This in itself explained a lot of problems. What do you think Xiangyang District used to look like? It wasn't much better than here. In the hands of District Magistrate Lu Shi, it changed in half a year. Now that Chang'an District, Maolin District, and Jiaoping District have all been conquered by him, these three poor places might become as good as Xiangyang District. What do you think? If I go for such a good opportunity, I might become rich. The person danced with joy as he spoke. In the end, he sighed. Unfortunately, my wife and I won't allow it. Otherwise, they'll fight with me. Everyone was discussing it. They were very curious about the Xiangyang District that the person mentioned. Most of them did not believe it. Upon hearing that, the boy servant asked the strategist in a low voice in surprise, This Lu Shi, isn't he just a district magistrate? A district magistrate mobilized troops to attack the three nearby districts? Who would believe such nonsense, let alone to recover the lost land in Dongqing and save the people from suffering? A mere district magistrate actually had the ability and military strength to recover the three districts. From what he said, he even had the three districts in his pocket. He's ambitious and bold. The strategist took a sip of tea. He's an interesting person. The teacher had heard of Lu Shi, but Lu Shi, he had never heard of him. Would you like to take a look, sir? The boy servant asked. The teacher glanced at the boy servant amusedly and said, Didn't you say that you wanted to go to Diong District? As the master and servant were talking, they heard the person say in exasperation, What I said is true. Those were spread by merchants when they were doing business. Who dared to go to Chang'an District to do business in the past? Now they've all gone there and each of them has made a lot of money. The person in charge is said to be Wei Ci or something. He's a great beauty and does business logically. The attendant widened his eyes in astonishment. Mr. Zixiao? I don't think so. Maybe he has the same name, or maybe he got the wrong person. With Zixiao's personality, he doesn't seem to be the type to fall into a trap so quickly. The current situation in the world was still chaotic. With Wei Xi's complicated thoughts, he would most likely choose to observe for a while and wait for the true dragon. The page boy pouted and said, "Didn't that person say she was a great beauty?" The strategist couldn't help but laugh. "I've taught you several times, but you didn't listen. Zixiao hates it when people talk about his appearance." The errand boy raised his hand and rubbed his chubby face. His appearance was mediocre. He really did not understand the mentality of those who wish to be ugly. "I'm not allowed to say that she's beautiful. Then I won't say it in the future." The boy grinned. After a while, they listened carefully to that person's narration. The more they listened, the more they felt that the mayor of Chang'an district was Wei Ci. The attendant said in a daze, "Maybe it's really Mr. Zixiao?" The strategist said uncertainly, "Perhaps." The servant asked, "Sir, why don't we go to Chang'an district to look for Mr. Zixiao?" The strategist was rather helpless. "You're a man of your word. Since we're already at the border of Diong district, it's only a day's time. It's not a wasted trip to see Huang Song first. If you're not satisfied, we'll go to Chang'an district to look for Zixiao." The master and servant drank their tea and returned to the carriage. The weather was still cold, and the people were still wearing heavy clothes. After the end of the spring plowing, there was a period of slack. There were not many people on both sides of the street. However, the closer they got to Diong district, the more lively it was. It looked a little like the leisure life of a farmer. This Diong district is peaceful. It seems that Huang something is quite capable. The servant drove the carriage, and the wheels of the carriage rolled slowly. The strategist clicked his tongue and did not make any comments. The master and servant found a quiet place and found that there were open tea houses and eateries on both sides of the street. The people who came and went had a slight blush on their faces. It was obvious that they were living a good life. The servant's impression of Huang Song increased gradually. The strategist's ears were filled with his servant's nagging, saying that everything was good, and that Huang Song seemed to be a good person. "You're very noisy," he said calmly. The servant retorted, "If I don't speak, you'll definitely say that the surroundings are too quiet again." Daily pitting master and servant against each other, January 1st, completed. He was mentally exhausted. Where had the reserved and obedient servant gone? The strategist found a seat in the tea house and asked the waiter some questions. Then, he ordered a pot of ordinary tea. "Don't you think Diong district is good, sir?" The servant stretched his neck and looked out of the window. Ever since they entered the city, the scenery they saw was quite good. There were even children playing on the streets. "It's quite good. However, it was not good enough." "Are you going to stay here, sir?" "Let's meet Huang Song first before making a decision." The strategist frowned, and information about Huang Song flashed across his mind. Since Huang Song and Feng Ju had caused a lot of trouble for Prince Changsho, Prince Changsho had investigated the identity and background of these two people. Huang Song was the godson of Huang Tan, who was a eunuch's descendant. His family background was a problem. However, he was not much better. Naturally, he would not be picky about his family background. As for his ability, the Diong district in front of him was the best evidence. However, he had to focus on this person's breadth of mind and bearing. After all, he was the one who had schemed to get Prince Changsho to frame Huang Song. How could Huang Song not bear a grudge and be disgusted? He did not want to be put in a difficult position. "How do we meet him?" the servant asked. "Hand over a visitation card and say that Yang Si, from Ding County at the border of Qinzhou, wishes to meet him." The servant exclaimed and said, "Sir, if we directly send a visitation card, he might not be willing to meet us." Yang Si said with a smile, "If Huang Song doesn't even know who plotted against him, there's no need to meet him. If Huang Song investigated him, he would naturally know who Yang Si was. Regardless of whether he flew into a rage or something else, he should at least meet him." The servant nodded in agreement and wrote a visitation card neatly. When the gatekeeper saw that the servant was dressed in rags and had countless patches on his clothes, he felt disdain in his heart. He took the visitation card unhappily. Without looking at the contents, the gatekeeper took it directly into the mansion. He did not put the card at the top. Instead, he squeezed it to the bottom. The visitation cards placed at the top were all from important people. After waiting for 3 days, there was still no news. Yongxi asked the servant to describe the situation that day in detail, and the servant said it aggrievedly. How would he pay attention to you when you were wearing a set of patched clothes? I'm afraid this card won't even reach that person's table. Forget it, forget it. If we can't meet, then we can't meet. Pack up. Let's set off to find Zixiao. That person still owes your master a few strings of money. He hasn't paid for a few years. This time we must get it back. Yongxi did not have any reluctance to leave, so he asked the servant to pack up and leave. The servant pulled the rug from under his feet. It's not that Mr. Zixiao owes you. It's clearly that you compounded the interest, from a penny of buns to a few strings of money. Yongxi turned his head and scolded him softly. No one will think you're mute if you don't speak. After the master and servant had been on the road for half a day, Feng Ju, who was already crazy busy, inadvertently flipped through the pile of visitation cards on Huang Song's table. Chapter 534. Seeing this visitation card, Feng Ju's heart surged with ecstasy. Ever since he suffered a loss at the hands of Prince Changsho, both he and Huang Song had noticed Prince Changsho's chief strategist, Yongxi. Yongxi was not well known. After all, to become an official or a scholar in Dongqing, there was a requirement for one's family background. People like Yongxi naturally belonged to the lower class. Therefore, Prince Changsho recruited him, which was why Yongxi went to him and was put in an important position. Unfortunately, Prince Changsho was not a wise ruler after all. Yongxi was soon given the cold shoulder. Feng Ju did not expect Yongxi's visitation card to appear on Huang Song's table. This meant that Yongxi had already left Prince Changsho and was currently without a master. If his lord, Huang Song, could recruit this person, it would be like adding wings to a tiger, and his foundation would be stronger. Although Deyong district had not experienced war, this small county also had its own ecological circle. The forces between them were complicated. Huang Song had indeed put in a lot of effort to completely control these and become the veritable magistrate of Deyong district. As soon as the situation stabilized, Feng Ju sent letters to his former classmates and friends. Now, there were already many replies with good news. Unfortunately, they had not come over yet. There were too few people who could be used in Deyong district. Now that Yongxi had come, and he was a genuine talent, how could Feng Ju not be happy? No one would complain about having too many talents, let alone Yongxi, who was a top-notch talent in a certain field. Feng Ju calmed himself down and quickly sent someone to invite Huang Song over. On the other hand, he carefully asked the concierge, "Do you know where the person who sent this visitation card lives?" Feng Ju glanced at the handwriting on the visitation card. It was well written and did not seem to have been written by a treacherous person like Yongxi. He thought about it and reckoned that this visitation card should have been written by Yongxi's boy servant on his behalf. The concierge glanced at the visitation card and was startled. He looked a little embarrassed and kept dodging Feng Ju's gaze. Feng Ju frowned and realized that there might be a twist in this. His heart skipped a beat, and he had an ominous premonition. He quickly asked, "Wait, how many days ago was this visitation card sent? Or, did you do something disrespectful to him?" How could the gatekeeper endure Feng Ju's increasingly imposing manner? He was so scared that he quickly waved his hands, but he couldn't say anything useful. The more Feng Ju looked, the more he felt that things were getting worse. He slammed his palm on the table, making a thunderous sound that made the gatekeeper's heart tremble. He said, "Tell me the truth, don't hide anything." The gatekeeper was so scared that he was trembling all over. Cold sweat flowed down his back in no time, drenching his clothes. He closed his eyes and accepted his fate. This card was sent here 3 days ago. I didn't disrespect that person. 3 days ago? Feng Ju widened his eyes and stared at the gatekeeper. His heart was burning with anger, and his right hand was clenched into a fist to prevent himself from losing his composure. "Tell me everything that happened that day in detail, word for word. Otherwise, you know the consequences." Feng Ju suppressed the raging anger in his heart and said to the gatekeeper, "Do you know what a big mistake you've made? I hope I can make up for my mistakes. Otherwise..." In fact, even if the gatekeeper didn't say it in detail, Feng Ju could guess some of it. He was just flipping through the visitation card out of boredom. This card was placed at the bottom, but according to Huang Song's serious attitude in dealing with official affairs, it was impossible for him to pile up official duties. The only possibility was that the gatekeeper had made the decision to place this visitation card at the bottom. The gatekeeper knelt on the ground. When had he ever seen Feng Ju speak so harshly? In the past, this noble young master had always been gentle and dignified, with a lazy smile on his face. He treated people very well and didn't put on airs. Now, he suddenly showed his imposing manner as a son of an aristocratic family. The gatekeeper was so frightened that he naturally said whatever he wanted to say. As soon as he finished speaking, Huang Song came in from the outside sleepily. Seeing the gatekeeper kneeling on the ground and trembling like a sieve, Feng Ju was still angry. He said, "Brother Ju, what big mistake did this little gatekeeper make to make you so angry? Don't be angry, I'll settle the score for you." Even though Feng Ju was full of anger, in the face of Huang Song's mischievous attitude, he suddenly couldn't get angry. He threw the visitation card in his hand into Huang Song's arms, pointed to the gatekeeper and said, "Take a look yourself. This wicked servant has ruined a lot of things." Huang Song was surprised. He had known Feng Ju for so long, and this person had rarely been angry. Once he was really angry, it was definitely not a small matter. Thinking of this, Huang Song quickly opened the visitation card. When he saw the name inscribed, his whole face twitched. The culprit who had once pulled him down from the position of colonel had actually come to send a visitation card? This feeling was really dreamy. However, Huang Song immediately realized that this was a good opportunity to recruit talents. Although he had many useful people under him, most of them were relatively mediocre, and top-notch talents were still scarce. Feng Ju had already written to his classmates and friends, but only a few of them replied affirmatively. Most of the others were taking a wait-and-see attitude. Of those who were willing to come, which one of them didn't come because of Feng Ju, Huang Song's favor of saving people during the earthquake in Dongqing, and the good reputation he had accumulated during the battle in Qinzhou? Otherwise, based on Huang Song's background alone, why would those nobles pay any attention to him? It wasn't that they looked down on Huang Song because of his background, it was just that Huang Song wasn't strong enough for people to ignore his background. Feng Ju's social skills were very strong. He had made a lot of friends when he was studying in the academy, and they maintained correspondence all year round. Therefore, Feng Ju could bring a group of capable talents to Huang Song. However, the current Huang Song was still too weak. If he was a little stronger, the number of people he could persuade would at least double. This Yang Si was the first talent who took the initiative to come to him. It was of great significance. Huang Song quickly asked the gatekeeper, "Where's the person who sent the visitation card?" The gatekeeper said with a bitter face, "I only know that they are staying at a guest house in the city, but it's been 3 days. I don't know if they're still there." 3 days had passed? Huang Song looked at the visitation card in surprise, then looked at the gatekeeper, and then looked at Feng Ju who was still angry. Well, he could understand why Feng Ju was so angry. Feng Ju's temper was still good, and he always maintained the reserved demeanor of a son of an aristocratic family. If it were Huang Song, he would have kicked the gatekeeper to vent his anger. In fact, he did do that, but he controlled the strength of his kick and did not kick the gatekeeper too hard. Lead the way. Although 3 days had passed, if they were lucky, the person hadn't left angrily yet. However, when they rushed to the guest house, the news they received was that the person had left the city at daybreak. "It's only been half a day, we can still catch up." Feng Ju resisted the urge to vomit blood. This gatekeeper was really tireless. Huang Song was also impatient. He took the reins handed to him by a servant, turned around, and got on the horse, ready to give chase. Feng Ju looked at the back of Huang Song's horse, and he felt like he was about to collapse. The talent who came to him was actually pushed away just like that. Chapter 535. The old horse pulled the carriage and walked leisurely. 1 step, 2 steps, 1 step, 2 steps. The pace was so slow that it made one sleepy. Although they had been walking for half a day, they were not too far away from Deyong district. The boy servant sat outside the carriage and muttered, "Sir, what if the person in charge of Chungon district isn't Mr. Zixiao?" The boy servant asked worriedly. Yang Si lifted the curtains on both sides and rolled up a book in his hands. The handwriting on it was delicate and powerful. Although it was not the work of a master, one could see the foundation of the handwriting. It had its own style, which was completely different from the boy servant's regular handwriting style. After listening to the boy servant's complaints, he said, "You're so unpredictable. If it weren't for my good temper, I don't know how much you'd suffer. You were the one who said you wanted to come to Deyong District and Chengon District. Now, you're the one who doesn't want to go." The boy servant muttered, "I'm just worried. I ran into a wall in Deyong District this time. What if I run into a wall in Chengon District too?" It was very dangerous to go out, especially when the situation in the north was unstable. There were conflicts between the Tsing-Yi army and the Red Lotus group everywhere. There were countless mobs who became bandits. The master and servant could arrive in Deyong District safely, but it did not mean that they could arrive in Chengon District safely. Yangtze said, "You're worrying too much. Instead of worrying unnecessarily here, why don't you think about what to eat for lunch today?" "I refuse to eat dry food." The boy servant said with a bitter face, "You're still picky at this time. It's hard to serve you." The master and servant chatted again. After about an hour, the sound of hooves could be heard behind them. Yangtze frowned and leaned a little closer to the window to take a look. He saw a young man in clean clothes galloping on a horse. From his appearance, he should be the son of a wealthy family, but at this moment, it was as if his buttocks were on fire, and he had an anxious expression on his face. Huang Song saw the carriage in front of him moving slowly. He suddenly pulled the reins and saw a thin man sitting inside through the window. His cheeks were a little plump, and his eyes were gentle. His eyes were like dark deep pools, and his lips were naturally upturned. No matter from which angle one looked at him, he was an amiable man. He was far too different from the Yangtze in Huang Song's imagination. When he saw the young attendant sitting outside the carriage, dressed in old clothes full of colorful patches, he stared at him with wide eyes. "Hero, what do you want to do?" The servant looked at the other party in panic and tightened his grip on the horsewhip in his hand. When Huang Song saw the page boy, he couldn't help but think of what the gatekeeper had said. His eyes lit up as he looked at Yangtze in the carriage. He cupped his fists, composed himself and asked, "Sir, are you Yangtze, Mr. Yang of Jiangding County?" The attendant looked a little surprised. Unfortunately, Huang Song's attention was on Yangtze and he did not notice this detail. Yangtze put down the book in his hand, lowered his eyelids, and said with a natural expression, "My surname is Zhao. You've got the wrong person." Huang Song was disappointed. Then, he apologized to Yangtze, waved his whip, and continued on his way. When he was out of sight, the page boy asked in a low voice, "Sir, that was—" Yangtze said with certainty, "Huang Song." The page boy was delighted, but he immediately withered. "Sir, why did you say that you're not him?" Yangtze said, "I'm not satisfied. This person is still too young and impulsive. I'm an old man who can't stand being tossed around." The page boy did not ask any more questions. If his master was not satisfied, then it was definitely not good. In fact, Yangtze was very satisfied with Huang Song's behavior of chasing after him. If Huang Song became more stable and mature in a few years, Yangtze felt that this person was indeed worth a try. He was able to disregard the past grudges and chase after him all the way. Just this action alone was more than 10 times better than Prince Chongsho. Yangtze said, "Wait a few more years. This person might be a hidden dragon. Now, let's go to Chengon District to find Zixiao to collect our debt and freeload for a few years. If Huang Song doesn't become crooked, we'll make another trip to Deyong District." Even if he left the mountain to look for a wise master, this was also about timing. He was indeed very satisfied with Huang Song. However, the timing was not right now. Naturally, Yangtze would not go back to him. The page boy was almost confused by his master, but he only needed to follow orders. Huang Song rode the horse and searched for an entire afternoon. There was no one who matched Yangtze and his servant on the road. When he thought about it again, he was immediately annoyed. That pair of master and servant was definitely Yangtze and his servant. When Feng Ju saw Huang Song return with a disappointed face, he asked about the situation and knew why Huang Song did not stop them. He sighed and said, "I'm afraid that Yangtze is angry." Huang Song felt uncomfortable and was quite critical of Yangtze's actions of playing tricks on people. He said, "Their carriage can't drive fast. If we send troops and horses, we can intercept them." Feng Ju frowned and said tiredly, "Forget it. The people's hearts are not here. What's the use of stopping them? If the concierge had not caused trouble, Yangtze would have been taken in. Unfortunately, such a big problem had arisen. Among the truly talented people, which one of them wasn't arrogant and prideful? After being treated coldly for 3 days, Feng Ju would feel angry even if he were in Huang Song's shoes, let alone Yangtze, who had some grudges with Huang Song. Since Feng Ju had said so, Huang Song could only give up dejectedly. On the way north, the number of refugees they saw increased several times, but there was no despair or numbness on their faces. This surprised the page boy and Yangtze. After asking carefully, they found out that these refugees were rushing to Qingan District, Maolin District, and Jiaoping District. They're recruiting people there now. 3 meals a day will be provided. At least they won't starve there. I heard that if they do well, they can even be promoted and rewarded. In the future, if they settle down in the county town, they can even get their own land and rent a house in the county town. Many refugees talked about this. In addition to some doubts, they were more hopeful about their future lives. Yangtze and his servants slowly rushed to Qingan District. From afar they could see people working on the city wall. Even though it had been more than a month, they could still tell from the traces on the city wall that the tragedy of the siege had been. The page boy could not understand, but Yangtze found a way. There were many refugees waiting outside the city. There were 2 roads to enter the city. One was for the people in the city to enter and exit, and the other was for the refugees. The current Qingan District was like a dance on the tip of a knife. Every step was extremely dangerous. The guards in the city were not as strong as what outsiders saw. If there were people with bad intentions among the refugees, they might cause trouble. Therefore, the screening of refugees entering the city was extremely strict. Even if they were refugees, the people in charge of the inspection were divided into 2 groups. One group was men, and the other group was women. The refugees had to queue up and be divided into 2 groups according to their gender for inspection, registration, and review. The page boy did not go to the group of refugees. Instead, he went to the tall city gate that was wide open. As expected, they were stopped. The page boy said, "My teacher and I are not refugees. We're here to look for someone." The guards at the city gate asked, "Looking for someone?" The page boy said politely, "The manager of Qingan District, Wei Ci, Mr. Wei Zixiao." Chapter 536. Qingan District was severely short of manpower. The guards at the city gates were all rotated between the male and female battalions. The guard who came forward to inquire was a female soldier. The attendant was a little slow to realize the gender of the guard, and he looked a little helpless. There was something wrong with Qingan District. Why would they let a woman guard the city gate and let her be exposed to the elements? The female soldier did not know what the other party was thinking. She saw that the page boy was wearing old clothes that were full of patches. The horse that was pulling the carriage was an old horse that looked like it was about to die. The horse walked slowly and the carriage was shabby and simple. They must have suffered a lot in Qingan District. The female soldier felt a bit of pity and asked with a gentler voice, "Are you here to find Mr. Wei?" Seeing that the female soldier had a good attitude, the servant felt relieved. It was good that he could communicate. He was afraid that he would meet someone who looked down on him. "My master's surname is Yang, and his name is Si. He is a good friend of Mr. Wei. I wonder if this, young lady, could you help me pass a message?" When the female soldier heard that Yang Si was Wei Si's friend, she did not dare to slight him. She ordered the messenger to pass on the message, and then respectfully asked the page boy to drive the carriage to the side so as not to block the people behind from entering the city. The servant was astonished to see the orderly scene at the city gate. "Sir, this place is interesting." It was the first time in his life that he had seen a female guard the city gate. Yang Si said, "It's indeed quite interesting, but it doesn't seem like Zixiao's style." He hit the nail on the head. This was indeed not Wei Si's doing. Wei Si's body was delicate and weak. Now that the seasons had changed, it was the season where it was easy to fall sick. He labored for a while before falling sick gloriously. In order not to be criticized by the audience in the streaming room, Jiang Pengji took the initiative to take over the miscellaneous items in Qingan District. Wei Ci took care of things from the side. She reminded Wei Ci, "I say with your body, you really need to take good care of it." Weak and sickly, he felt like a porcelain doll. Jiang Pengji had never been soft-hearted when she pressured her subordinates, but she could not bring herself to do anything to this sickly man. Fortunately, Wei Ci only had a low fever. After recuperating for a few days, his condition was almost healed. For the past 2 days, he had been able to help with official business. However, his lips were still a little pale. Coupled with his face, he was simply the standard of a sickly beauty. Thank you for your concern, my lord. I will definitely take good care of myself in the future. Wei Ci agreed gently, as if he was to blame for falling ill and delaying his work. She was so considerate that the audience in the streaming room couldn't help it. They felt deeply that Jiang Pengji was shameless. It wasn't that Beauty Ci didn't recuperate. It was clearly that Chen Ke's work didn't give her time to recuperate. Yutong, trash streamer, you bully my husband every day. My heart aches when I see you. Salted Egg Superman, Beauty Ci still values her health. She's very cooperative when taking medicine when she's sick. I felt bitter when I looked at the screen before. Who asked the host to not have a firm foothold? Even if he wanted to recuperate, he wouldn't be able to recuperate in peace, right? Yan Rian, I think you guys should stop scolding the streamer. Let's just pick up our weapons and hit her. Shenjia, you all feel sorry for Beauty Ci, but I feel sorry for the streamer. She was a typical person who was tough on the outside but soft-hearted on the inside. When Beauty Ci was sick, she obediently took over the work. In the end, Beauty Ci did not continue to be tired. Think back to the content of the live broadcast these days. It's all about the host handling documents in the government office. Looking at those flamboyant things, I always feel like I went to a fake school. According to Jiang Pengji's temperament, if she did not really sympathize with her subordinates, how could she stay in one place for a long time? She would have been so unrestrained that she could not be seen all day long, okay? Speaking of which, the streamer is very good to Beauty Ci. Look at Feng Jin, Su Ku, Qiguan Rang, Meng Hun, Luo Yue, and the others. They are all so busy. Have they ever seen the streamer being soft-hearted? It was not appropriate for Wei Ci to waste his energy now, but he would carefully organize the bamboo slips according to the order of importance. The most important bamboo slips that needed to be dealt with the most were placed in a position that was convenient for her to reach. The slightly less important ones were placed in the first category. His expression was serious and he was very meticulous in his work. Jiang Pengji picked up her pen to deal with the documents, annotated, or gave instructions. Occasionally, she looked up at Wei Ci. Wei Ci noticed her gaze and asked in amusement, "Why are you looking at me like that, my lord?" Jiang Pengji said very honestly, "You're gentle and virtuous. If we were husband and wife in our previous lives, you would definitely be a good wife." Wei Ci's hand trembled and the bamboo slips fell to the ground with a thud. He raised his hand to pick them up, but he accidentally touched the table. The bamboo slips that had been piled high fell into a pile. His face was pale and he lowered his head. He quickly picked up the bamboo slips and put them back in their original places. After a while, he pretended to be calm and asked with a pale face, "Why did you have such an absurd idea, my lord?" Jiang Pengji said, "I have some small habits when dealing with official affairs. I won't let people know unless they are extremely trustworthy." She had naturally experienced a lot of competition and tests to be able to climb to the pinnacle of power in the federal military from an ordinary genetic warrior. Not only did she have to guard against external enemies, but she also had to pay attention to internal abnormalities. Under such circumstances, how could her vigilance be weak? Wei Ci was quite familiar with Jiang Pengji's habits. If he had not spent a long time with her, it would have been impossible for him to know that. She had tested him a few times in the past. Now, she was just more certain of the guess in her heart. Wei Ci's lips moved. Jiang Pengji suddenly said, "It's just a joke. Zixiao, don't take it seriously." He only felt that his palms were soaked with cold sweat. The atmosphere in the government office was quite cold. At that moment, the arrival of the messenger broke the deadlock. Wei Ci secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He couldn't wait to get up and ask the messenger. His back view made it seem like he was fleeing. "What's the matter?" he asked. The messenger said, "There's a pair of master and servant outside the city. They claim to be your friends." After Chang'an district was conquered, Wei Ci drafted several letters, intending to lure a few friends over. However, He had been too busy recently and had a minor illness. The letters had not been sent yet. Who is it? They claim to be Yang Si from Jiangding County, the messenger replied. Yang Si? Wei Si's mind went blank for a second. Zhang Pengji's ears were very sharp. She asked, Zixiao's friend is here? Wei Si's previous nervousness was swept away. Surprise surged in his heart. Even his voice sounded a little cheerful. Yes, Jing Rong is here. Jing Rong. He's from Jiangding County in Qinzhou. His name is Yang Si. His courtesy name is Jing Rong. Wei Si could not suppress the smile on his face. This person is a great talent. Zhang Pengji sized up Wei Si's fragile little body. She asked calmly, how talented is he? Wei Si did not know why. He said frankly, I'm ashamed of my inferiority. Zhang Pengji crossed her arms and looked at him. She said, I think Zixiao is better than anyone else. Wei Si was speechless. Seeing that Zhang Pengji had returned to the table, Wei Si was surprised. My lord, aren't you going to take a look with me? They're here to look for you, not me. Why should I join in the fun? It might cause a misunderstanding. Chapter 537. Wei Si said, I didn't think this through. Please wait for a moment, my lord. I'll go and welcome Jing Rong. Go and come back early. Zhang Pengji buried her head in the table. The tall pile of bamboo slips and documents drowned her figure. The messenger traveled quickly and the news was not delayed. Yang Si and his servant did not wait long outside the city. When Wei Si arrived at the city gate, he saw Yang Si sitting on the edge of the carriage, looking at the refugees in the queue with interest. Jing Rong, is it really you? Hearing the familiar voice, Yang Si turned his head and saw his friend in heavy clothes. It made him feel hot just by looking at him. Yang Si smiled and stepped on the stool to get out of the carriage. The two bowed in greeting. Zixiao, I'm here to seek shelter with you. I hope you can take me in for a while. Wei Si was delighted. The smile on his face became brighter and more sincere. He hurriedly joked, You and I are close friends. There's no need to stand on ceremony. Not to mention for a while, even if you're here for 30 to 50 years, I won't chase you out. A few female soldiers who were paying attention to the conversation secretly exchanged glances. They thought it was fake, but they didn't expect Yang Si to be Wei Si's friend. Listening to the conversation between the two, the female soldiers revealed a meaningful look that said, You know what I know. Yang Si said bluntly, Wei Zixiao, what you said is fake. If you're here for 30 to 50 years, won't your future sister-in-law turn the world upside down? Nowadays, men were prevalent in the world. For the sake of family harmony, many men who were close to each other would consciously keep their distance. Otherwise, it might cause misunderstandings like the female soldiers. Other than facing Zhang Pengji, Wei Si was quite open in front of his friends, especially people like Yang Si who were not serious. He replied with a smile, To be able to have a friend like Jing Rong, even if I'm not married for 30 to 50 years, what's the harm? Yang Si suddenly stopped smiling and shook his sleeves. I haven't seen you for a few years. You're getting more and more shameless. How can you say such things? Wei Si glanced sideways. I'm not as shameless as Jing Rong. A beauty's every movement and frown were full of charm. Yang Si felt that he couldn't stand it. The boy servant beside him looked at Wei Si's face with infatuation. Seeing this, Yang Si secretly hit the boy servant on the back of his head. Wei Si was beautiful, but he was also black-hearted. Wasn't he afraid of being secretly plotted against by him? The two of them chatted for a while before Wei Si took the initiative to welcome Yang Si into the city. His attitude was warm and thoughtful, which made Yang Si nervous. He had no choice but to be tense. How many years had he known Wei Si? Once this fellow smiled like 100 flowers blooming, nothing good would come of it. The two of them were so intimate that the female soldiers guarding the gate quietly watched them leave. The page boy led the horse and followed behind them. The first female soldier said, Is that person Sir's wife? Female soldier B. Why do I feel that? Sir is more like my wife. When he entered the inner city, there were very few people in the surroundings. The houses were dilapidated and damaged, and it was a desolate scene. Yang Si followed Wei Si for a while before he saw that someone was tearing down the ruins. The surface of the ground was dug full of potholes. He collected his thoughts and asked Wei Si seriously, "When I first heard that the chief of Chungon district was Zi Xiao, I thought it was just someone with the same name. After all, according to Zi Xiao's character, it was impossible for him to fall into the trap so early. The master you serve now is very ambitious." There was a faint smile on Wei Si's lips. Yes, no one can be more ambitious than her. Yang Si was puzzled. His eyes lingered on Wei Si's face. He felt that after not seeing him for a few years, they were no longer friends. Wei Si smiled and dispelled his doubts. "Jingrong should know my ambition. When I saw her, I knew that she could do it. She might be the only one who could do it. Since I've already met the right person, why should I care about whether the timing is right or not? A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in, and a virtuous minister chooses a master to serve." Since he had already met a capable person, he naturally had to seize the opportunity. Yang Si knew Wei Si's ambition. He said in astonishment, "You're actually serious? My heart is like a stone, it can't be changed." He was so serious that he couldn't be more serious. Yang Si was stunned for a while. He pointed at the scene of devastation and said, "That's it? Are you sure?" Wei Si said, "Within 3 months, Jingrong just needs to watch. Who knows if the ruins today will become an existence like the capital." The more he said so, the more curious Yang Si was. He said, "Just because of what you said, I have to freeload in your house for 3 to 4 months to see what this place can become." Wei Si smiled meaningfully. This was exactly what he wanted to hear. He could drag Zhang Ping, who was in the hermit clique who was obsessed with his wife Crane, into the water. Could he not deal with Yang Si? Zhang Ping was a person who didn't care about anything, but now he was ordered around until he was dizzy and disoriented. When he sent a letter a few days ago, he was still complaining that he hadn't had a good rest for a long time. Now he could sleep soundly as soon as his head touched the pillow. Yang Si was different from Zhang Ping. It was too easy to drag him into the water. Yang Si looked at Wei Si's smile and shivered involuntarily. He felt some goosebumps on his back. He said rudely, "Don't smile, I get scared looking at you." Wei Si listened and his smile grew. The pressure of the government office was basically piled on Jiang Pengji. Wei Si, a patient who had just recovered from a minor illness, did not need to do much work. There were not many places to live in the district, and it was a comprehensive renovation. Wei Si's residence was arranged to be in a house near the district headquarters. It was said that the previous owner of the house was a wealthy businessman. Later, his entire family was destroyed by the Tsing-Yi army. It was an ownerless property and was taken over by the public. Wei Si brought Yang Si and his servant into his house. He did not deliberately ask about their purpose in coming to Chungon district. It was just a normal visit. He understood Yang Si. This person's style of doing things or planning was like a poisonous snake. He was patient, dormant, and killed with one blow. However, no one was perfect. Yang Si's hobby was a fatal flaw. This person loved delicious food. He loved to eat, but he was picky. He was very picky. When conditions permitted, he would never eat vegetables if he could eat meat, and he would never drink soup if he could drink wine. Wei Si had the experience of his previous life. He was very clear about how Yang Si was tricked by Jiang Pengji. The black-hearted Jiang Pengji tempted him with delicious food and alienated the friendship between Yang Si and his lord, causing a misunderstanding. It was fine if it happened once or twice. Yang Si also explained clearly. But what if it happened more often? Many a little makes a mickle. Yang Si's lord, Huang Song, was also quite suspicious by nature. He did not say it on the surface, but he must have remembered it in his heart. Yes, in his previous life, Yang Si was defeated by his hobby of gluttony. In his previous life, Wei Si and Yang Si secretly reminisced about old times. This person hugged him and poured out his grievances, scolding Jiang Pengji. It was easy to change a leopard's skin. Yang Si was defeated by his gluttony in his previous life. Naturally, he would be defeated in this life. In order to take care of Wei Si, the patient, Jiang Pengji assigned him the chef she had trained in the district headquarters kitchen. One could imagine what the 3 meals in Wei Si's house tasted like. Yang Si would not stand on ceremony with Wei Si at all. It was as easy for him to order Wei Si's chef as if he was ordering his own boy servant. In just 7 or 8 days, the boy servant tragically discovered that his master's face had grown fatter. Chapter 538. Yongxi's expression froze and he glared at the boy servant fiercely. Don't say it if you don't know how to speak. Which boy servant bullied his master all day like this kid? The boy servant packed up the clean clothes, folded them neatly into the suitcase, and muttered, Master is picky about food. He won't eat this or that. He won't stop until he gets what he wants to eat. I don't have the skills of a chef. Yongxi was stunned and said matter-of-factly, Then go and learn. The boy servant chuckled. I also ate some. Such delicious food must be a family skill. Who would be willing to teach outsiders? If that's the case, it makes sense. By the time Wei Ci returned, the moon was already high in the sky. Yongxi squatted down to wait for him and asked, Can your family's chef be sold? Wei Ci asked in a puzzled manner. You mean the residence's chef? That person was specially rewarded by the Lord because she sympathized with Ci's health. As long as it was a reward, no matter if it was a person or an object, it had a special meaning and naturally could not be sold. Yongxi said, Then can you let that chef teach my boy servant culinary skills? I'm afraid I'll starve to death if I get used to eating the food in your residence. Yongxi never hid his hobbies in front of his best friend. Eating was also a kind of art. Loving to eat was also a way to enjoy life. There was nothing to be ashamed of. Wei Ci thought about it and said bluntly, You can, but the chef's main responsibility is to be in charge of the residence's 3 meals and teaching others culinary skills. I'm afraid this is not his job. If you want to learn, you need to pay for it. Talking about money hurt feelings, and talking about feelings hurt money. Whether it was Yongxi or Wei Ci, both of them were not beautiful white flowers. Who didn't understand each other? Hurting feelings was hurting feelings, but money had to be talked about. Yongxi's entire fortune was just those 2 boxes of books and some small property. Based on his understanding of Wei Ci, this person would definitely demand an exorbitant price. So he decided to strike first and gain the upper hand. Zixiao, have you forgotten that you still owe me a few strings of money? Just pay it off. Wei Ci was stunned for a moment. When did he owe him money? Everyone knew that Yongxi not only loved to eat but was also stingy. He was not greedy, but the money that entered his pocket could not go out. Attribute Pichio. Yongxi rummaged through the old debts. The so-called old debts of a few strings of coins originated from a steamed bun worth 1 copper coin back then. Wei Ci. Sure enough, he still didn't know this friend well enough. How many strings of money could a steamed bun worth of a copper coin roll out of it? After thinking about it, he changed his words and said, All right, I'll return it to you. Yongxi was surprised. When did Wei Ci become so easy to talk to? When it comes to craftsmanship, I think the small kitchen in the government office is the best. Why don't you send your page boy there to learn for a few days? Yongxi nodded in agreement. For a foodie, there was nothing more tempting than delicious food. Seeing Yongxi like this, Wei Ci suddenly understood why Yongxi had been tricked so badly by His Majesty in his previous life. Serves you right. During the time when the page boy went to school, Jiang Pengji found that the food in the small kitchen of the government office was increasing. Even though she had a big appetite, she felt a little bloated after a meal. The key was that the taste of the food was a little heavy, which made her mouth dry. However, her stomach had no capacity. No matter how thirsty she was, she could only hold a mouthful of water in her mouth to quench her thirst. She could not swallow it. She called the chef over and asked. Only then did she know that the menu in the small kitchen was specially instructed by Wei Ci. With this reason, Jiang Pengji waved her hand helplessly and sent the chef away. She said with a face full of affection, "Let him be." Just as Wei Ci expected, the page boy showed off in front of Yongxi after learning a little, which aroused the gluttonous worm in Yongxi's stomach. When he was working the next day, Wei Ci heard Yongxi waiting outside. He looked up at the sky and knew that Yongxi had come over at mealtime. It was also a unique skill to freeload in such an elegant and refined manner. Because she was busy with government affairs, Jiang Pengji basically stayed in the government office. She also ate there. There were only the 2 of them in the originally simple and crude government office. Today, a young man with a little baby fat suddenly appeared. Her eyes drifted away and she ate her own food, ignoring the other party. Yang Si also ate as if there was no one else around. His appetite was quite good. In short, the atmosphere was a little awkward. Wei Si originally wanted to create an atmosphere for the two of them to talk. According to his lord's charm and enigmatic temper, the two of them would not immediately collude with each other, but at least they would hit it off. Now, they had no intention of talking at all. Not only did the three of them feel that the atmosphere was strange, but the audience in the streaming room also noticed the clues. Chun Lai. I came to watch the ruler and his minister eat. Why is there an awkward third wheel? Ku, maybe it's a newly recruited talent? The streamer's territory is getting bigger and bigger now, and she needs more people. Ko Jiao Chi Fan. The atmosphere is obviously not right. It feels like the three of them are eating on their own. They don't even make eye contact. Jiang Pengji was under a seal that said, "My subordinate is sick and I have to help him work overtime." For the next few days, the scene of the live streaming was in the small government office. The audience in the streaming room was a little tired of watching. The 3 mealtimes every day were their only fun. Watching the streamer and beauty CI eat, many people could eat a few more bowls. After all, they were good-looking and had an appetite. Who could get used to the sudden appearance of a stranger? Yang Si. For the next few days, Yang Si came to the government office to report for meals. At first, it was just 1 meal a day, then 2 meals a day, and finally 3 meals a day plus various snacks. Jiang Pengji was tired of watching it. She directly said to Yang Si, "Why don't you stay? It's quite troublesome to report every day." This was the first sentence she said to Yang Si. Wei Si was shocked when he heard this. His right hand, which was holding the brush, drew a long line on the bamboo slip. No, what was the difference between his lord's words and throwing people away? Recruiting a strategist could not be like this. Especially for someone like Yang Si who was very sensitive about his self-esteem, such ambiguous words were a taboo. If this was said by a friend, it would at most be a joke. If it was said by a stranger, it would be very easy to be judged as mockery. Yang Si was a little unhappy at first, but when he looked up into Jiang Pengji's eyes, he realized that she did not mean to mock or disdain him. She was simply stating a fact. This discovery extinguished the flame that had just appeared in Yang Si's head. What if you don't want to? That's a pity. The food in the government office is only made from the materials that can be found around Fengyi County. It's poor in variety. Compared to delicacies, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Jiang Pengji continued, "Moreover, if you don't want to, remember to pay for the meals for the next few days." Was he bullying her strategist with compound interest? If he didn't agree, he would be in debt for the rest of his life. Yang Si continued to look at her. "And then," she said, "if you follow me, you can eat all over the world in the future. If you don't follow me, try to see if you can walk out of this door." Wei Si's heart was like dead ashes. With his lord's temperament, it was no wonder that the talents in her previous life were all captured. Chapter 539. Jin Tian Wuging. I've lived for a long time, but this is the first time I've seen someone recruit a strategist like this. Streamer, even if you want to court death, don't do it like this. If this gets out, how can you hire employees in the future? If you can't hire employees, who will work for you in the future? There's a limit to courting death. Yoguai, I'm thinking, if in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Liu Bei said to Zhuge that if you don't follow me, I won't let you go out of this door. Do you think there will still be a 3-way division of the world? Ha ha ha, I'm dying of laughter. The streamer has a unique style. Ishibuzen. Although I'm very surprised, this is really in line with the streamer's temperament. It's something she would say. However, strategists in ancient society all have their own pride. With such a threatening method, the other party might not be willing to submit, right? With his life threatened, Yang Si might agree to the streamer's recruitment, feign civility, and then backstab the streamer when she's not on guard. The above viewer could be considered the emperor of truth. Didn't Yang Si trick his old master, Prince Changsho? The key was that Prince Changsho only treated him coldly. He came and went at his beck and call without giving him any face or dignity. Jiang Pengji, on the other hand, directly threatened Yang Si's life. Comparing the two, it seemed that Yang Si would hate Jiang Pengji more. There were many onlookers in the streaming room. Except for a few people who could speak seriously, the others were all amusing. Gus Hui Leonian. Tisk Teske. You're still too young. If the streamer wins Yangtze over, she'll definitely throw a bunch of trivial official documents at him. She'll squeeze out all his human resources and make sure that he has no personal time apart from sleeping, eating, and going to the toilet. He'll be so busy that he won't be able to think about anything else. When the dust settles, it'll take at least half a year. Gus Hui Leonian. Do you think it's possible for a person like the streamer to not win his loyalty in half a year? When everyone saw the bullet screen, they all sent a string of ellipses. It made so much sense that they were speechless. What Jiang Pengji needed the most now was people who could work. As long as the work was done, everything would be fine. Lao Ciji Lianming. Haha, I haven't been in the streaming room for a long time. Actually, you don't have to worry too much. Strategists have their own temperament. Maybe the streamer's domineering style is more to Yangtze's liking? After all, you have to believe that your host is not an ordinary person. Moreover, Wei Ci and Yangtze were good friends. How could Wei Ci watch him cause trouble? It was true that Wei Ci could not watch Yangtze plot against Jiang Pengji, but he also did not want Jiang Pengji to lay her hands on Yangtze. If that was the case, who would dare to pledge allegiance to her in the future? Master? Wei Ci could not help but shout nervously when he saw the tense atmosphere between the two of them. Jiang Pengji ignored Wei Ci and continued, Sir, please don't think that I'm willful and overbearing. It's just that this is the government office. The documents that have been put aside are related to the lifeline of the district. The calamity of Fengyi County has just been settled. I don't want to attract unnecessary trouble at this time. Otherwise, Yangtze would become one of them, and it would be fine for him to walk around the government office. Otherwise, in order to keep the secret, even if Yangtze could leave the government office, he could not leave Chang'an district. Yangtze's expression did not change. Instead, he asked with interest, That's how you made Zixiao stay? He understood Wei Ci. This person would not join the world situation so early, let alone assist a young lad with a bad temper. He had been puzzled before, but looking at it now, he felt that he knew the truth. Jiang Pengji said narcissistically, Of course not. Zixiao admires my talent and took the initiative to travel thousands of miles to look for me. Wei Ci looked slightly embarrassed. Yangtze almost could not keep the expression on his face. He had seen narcissistic people, but he had never seen such a narcissistic and confident teenager. Yangtze said bluntly, You're not the wise master I'm looking for. He even despised Huang Song for being too immature. He despised a willful and mischievous young lad like Jiang Pengji even more. Jiang Pengji also said, I didn't say that I want you to stay here forever. Yangtze and Wei Ci were speechless. They looked at her in surprise. What did she mean? She continued, You've freeloaded so many meals in the government office these days. Doesn't your conscience hurt when you see Zixiao and I being so busy? You should at least help out and pay for the food, right? After you're done with your work, you can go wherever you want. I won't keep you. Yangtze's face turned slightly green. So this person was just unhappy that he didn't pay for freeloading, so she asked him to be a part-time worker? Wei Ci secretly face-bombed. Forget it. He really couldn't expect his lord to take the normal route of being courteous and condescending to the wise to recruit talents. Yangtze responded with an, oh, and smiled meaningfully. It's not impossible for me to temporarily help you for a while, by letting me come into contact with the government affairs of Chang'an district. It's just, aren't you afraid that when I leave, the news will be leaked and it'll be disadvantageous to you? Jiang Pengji rolled her eyes and said indifferently, When you leave not only Fengyi County, but perhaps the entire Wanzhou will be in my hands. Her tone was flat, but Yangtze could feel the irresistible and absolute confidence under her calmness. Young Lang Jun, you're so ambitious, Yangtze said. Are you looking down on the royal family of Dongqing? At least Dongqing hadn't been completely destroyed. I heard that you used to work for Prince Changsho. Prince Changsho led his troops to besiege Chenzhou in the name of purging the emperor's corrupt officials. Don't you know what kind of scheme it is? Jiang Pengji said indifferently. As the old saying goes, it's better for the nobles and generals to have guts. Isn't it a matter of course that I, Lu Shi, can occupy the 4 districts of Fengyi County as the magistrate of Xiangyang district? At first, Wei Ci was worried that Yangtze would really bear a grudge against Jiang Pengji, But as their conversation progressed, he calmed down instead. Yang Si was very ambitious and restless. Jiang Pengji's arrogant and unruly character and style were to his liking. In particular, the phrase "it's better for the nobles and generals to have guts" hit Yang Si's itch even more. In today's world, if one didn't have looks, family background, or fame, even if one was talented, it was still impossible to climb up. Yang Si followed Prince Changshuo's path to become an official. Wasn't it because he was unconventional and only used those who were talented? Unfortunately, Prince Changshuo was just putting on an act. He didn't really care about his background. It was inevitable that Yang Si would be at odds with him. Jiang Pengji was rather talkative. It's not just Fengyi County, not just Wanzhou, not just Dongqing, not even just the 5 countries. As long as I can stand on my feet, I want to go. I can do what my predecessors can't. At that moment, the smile on Yang Si's face was slightly forced. He said sarcastically, "Young Lang Jun, you only have Fengyi County, and there's still the Tsing-Yi army and the Red Lotus group eyeing you covetously. Aren't you afraid that you'll cut your tongue by saying such big words?" Chapter 540. Well, yours, everything is yours. Yang Si looked at the bamboo slips, which were almost as tall as a person, and felt a little depressed. He didn't know what had gotten into him just now. He agreed to be a part-time worker on a whim. What kind of part-time worker could come into contact with these messy but important internal affairs? He turned his head and saw Wei Ci sitting by the tea stove, leisurely brewing tea and sipping it. Yang Si raised his hand and pointed to the pile of bamboo slips that were as tall as a person. He asked with a grim smile, "Didn't you say you were very busy?" If such a tall pile of bamboo slips fell, the weight could seriously injure a person. He really did not know how a small Chungon district could have so many trivial matters. Yang Si wanted to capture Wei Ci and interrogate him properly. Wei Ci pursed his lips and smiled shyly. He said embarrassedly, "I'm weak, I can't do it for a long time." Yang Si secretly gritted his teeth. He sneered and said sarcastically, "It's fine if you lie to others, but you can't lie to me." What weak? Wei Ci's body was very weak, but it was not to that extent. "Jingrong, I really didn't lie to you. Last winter, I was trapped in the deep mountains. It was snowing heavily and cold air entered my body. My body is not like before." Wei Ci still had a gentle smile on his face. His words sounded pitiful, but there was a hint of slyness in his eyes. "If you're too busy and fall sick, all the miscellaneous things in the government office will be piled on you. In this way I can't bear to do it." "Can't bear to do it? Touch your conscience. When you said this, did you mean it?" Everyone knew each other well. Others said that Wei Ci was noble and virtuous, but he knew that this person was also full of evil tricks. "Every word I said, absolutely not a lie," Wei Ci said. Yang Si chuckled. He no longer had the strength to continue to refute. He was really afraid that this fellow would really fall sick. Then, the trivial matters of the government office would be piled on him. As for Jiang Pengji, after capturing Yang Si as a free laborer, she was completely liberated from the government office. Yang Si worked for 3 days in a row. He found that Jiang Pengji seemed to have disappeared from the world. Except for appearing on time at mealtimes, she was nowhere to be seen at other times. For lunch, Jiang Pengji carried a pile of bamboo slips into the kitchen as soon as the food was served. At this moment, Yang Si realized that she was not wearing her usual wide-sleeved cloak. Instead, she was dressed in a neat brown dress. Her trousers were rolled up high above her knees, and her sleeves were rolled up, revealing most of her arms. Her feet seemed to have been soaked in the water for a long time. Yang Si glanced at the bamboo hat on her head, and there was a strange look in his eyes. Such down-to-earth attire did not resemble Lu Shi at all. Didn't they say that Lu Shi came from a noble family in Hejin County? "Your Highness, Ci will help you." Wei Ci got up and wanted to help her take the heavy things. She looked at his body and walked around him. Quang! The bamboo slips were placed on the table, giving off a dull and loud sound. Jiang Pengji clapped her hands and said, "There have been more and more refugees entering the city recently. How's the progress of reclaiming the wasteland?" Wei Ci did not feel awkward and replied, "According to the plan, about 30% of the wastelands have been opened up. It is estimated that it will take another 2 months for the wastelands to be completely opened up. Every mu of land has been recorded, and it will be distributed after the household registration is completed. Hearing about the household registration, Yang Si, who was at the side, really wanted to slam the table and leave. There were more and more refugees outside, which meant that the work of household registration would become more and more onerous, not to mention the subsequent sorting and induction. If something went wrong, it would be troublesome to deal with it again in the future. Even a person like Yang Si could not bear it anymore. Jiang Pengji felt Yang Si's resentment and said, "There's no hurry, as long as it can be completed before spring plowing next year. The household registration is very important. It's fine to work slowly, but it's better to be slow than messy. Compared to this, I'm more worried that there will be a drought this year." Wei Xiai and Yang Si were both stunned. A drought? Jiang Pengji took a ceramic bowl, poured some cold water into it, and gulped it down. "Yes, I've found a few experienced farmers. They also think that the weather this year will probably be hot and have little rain." Jiang Pengji judged based on her own experience. In addition, her brain was strong, so she could see details that ordinary people could not. However, in terms of farming, she still had to listen to the opinions of the old farmers. Combining the information from both sides, Jiang Pengji felt that this year was probably not good. The water conservancy facilities in Xiangyang district had taken shape. If they took good care of the crops in the fields and got through the summer, the autumn harvest this year should not be too bad. However, the situation in Cheng'an district was different. There were not many crops, but more and more refugees gathered. They could not possibly not drink water for the whole summer, could they? She checked the files of the past and found a lot of things. It turned out that Cheng'an district also had a few large-scale droughts. The fields were cracked, the rivers dried up, and the crops basically withered. Wei Xiai said, "If there's really a drought, I'm afraid the progress of reclaiming the wasteland will be delayed." After the Tsing-Yi army wreaked havoc, the spring plowing in Cheng'an district was basically scrapped. There were basically not many crops planted this spring. If there was a drought this year, they did not have to worry about the crops in the fields. They only had to solve the water problem. "It's okay, there's still a lot of time. Take it slowly." Jiang Pengji poured another bowl of water for herself. "I've brought a few farmers to the nearby mountains to look for water sources these few days. I'm trying to see if I can open up a canal. It just so happens that Shiheng's water wheel can also come in handy." Zhang Ping, courtesy name Shiheng. Ever since he was tricked into the fire pit that was Xiangyang district by his good friend Wei Xiai, his daily life had been very fulfilling. Hearing what she said, Yang Si secretly looked at Jiang Pengji's feet. No wonder her feet and calves looked pale from being soaked in the water. It turned out that she had gone deep into the mountains to look for water. The audience in the streaming room had been following the live stream. Naturally, they knew how long Jiang Pengji's feet had been soaked in the water. Their hearts ached when they saw it. "Oh Huang Gangbatzi, streamer, if the drought this year is very serious, I suggest building a smaller reservoir to store water." "Ju Gao Gao. Get rid of me. Look at the situation now. Digging a reservoir is not something that can be solved in a few days. That's easy to say. Where is the most reasonable place to dig a reservoir? How is the best place to build a reservoir? These are all things that require knowledge. It's not something that can be solved just by talking. If the reservoir is not built well, it can't be guaranteed that one year there will be a flood and the reservoir will collapse. When that time comes, won't those in a lower position drown?" Renkaiching Huanda. "Tiske, then it's very reasonable for the streamer to prepare to dig a canal? Is it that simple to dig a canal?" Chapter 541. Iduan Shoming Ruhu. It's good to build canals, but if there's really a drought, won't the water evaporate? Yikan Janjia 0 to 5. I think the streamer will think of a solution, such as sealing the canals to reduce evaporation. Although the audience in the streaming room was just chatting and some of their suggestions were whimsical, Jiang Pengji did not ignore them. Instead, she picked up many ideas and remembered them. It was impossible to dig a reservoir, but it was possible to build a few small reservoirs. Fortunately, there were many refugees now. The construction of houses in Cheng'an district could be delayed. The reclamation of wasteland could also be slowed down, but the reservoirs could be put on the agenda first. It would be best if there was no drought this year. If there was, they could at least guard against it. Wei Ci saw her frown and sighed in his heart. He could not help but think of the old monk Liaochen's words. There were indeed many natural disasters in his previous life, but they were not as frequent as in this one. He didn't dare to think about how much luck that monster the old monk mentioned had stolen to turn the entire world into such a desolate place. Although the Lord did not say with certainty that there would be a drought this year, Wei Ci already believed it in his heart. Try to find underground water veins and dig wells. Anyway, these things have to be done sooner or later. Might as well do it all together. She seemed relaxed. Yang Si, who was beside her, could not help but chuckle. This person just moved his mouth and the people below him ran errands. If he had known that eating a few meals would lead to such an outcome, he would probably still eat. For a person with a taste for delicacies, it would be a waste of a trip to the world if he had not tasted such delicious food. After all, the drought had not happened. Jiang Pengji wanted to bring people to dig canals, not only to prevent it from happening, but also to facilitate irrigation and water use for the people. It was best if the drought did not happen. If it did, at least they could survive it. Chengan district was close to the mountains, so there were many available water sources. Jiang Pengji led a group of experienced farmers to climb up and down, drawing the route of the canals day and night. She also asked some craftsmen from Xiangyang district to build a brick kiln near Chengan district. The bricks fired in the kiln were not used to pave the ground. The new bricks were wide and long, and the cross-section was lighter and thinner than the previous ones. It was a little troublesome to fire, and there were many inferior products. Jiang Pengji did not rush them. She just asked them to continue developing and not to be afraid of spending money. She had plenty of soil, and the coal bought from Cheongda County could be used until next winter. She was not afraid of squandering. Once Jiang Pengji became rich, even Wei Ci was afraid. Yang Si looked at the busy figures below the city wall. He could feel the bustling atmosphere from afar. He sighed. It's good to be rich. It's so much more convenient to do anything. If she had no money or food, Jiang Pengji would not have been able to attract so many refugees to work for her. Money was not omnipotent, but it was impossible to live without money. What surprised Yang Si was that when Jiang Pengji hired the refugees as laborers, she did not have any gender requirements, only the workload. Regardless of gender, the amount of food they received each day was the same. When he asked her why, the reason she gave him was irrefutable. Why don't you pay me the same for doing the same job? Whether it was moving bricks, digging canals, building houses, or repairing city walls, these were all extremely exhausting labor. Since the female workers who came to apply for the job could complete a day's work, they had to give her the food and pay she deserved. Wasn't this a matter of course? Not only that, the more he stayed in Chengan district and came into contact with the government affairs here, the more he felt that he had opened the door to a new world. A women's camp was actually established here. Wei Ci saw that he was surprised and explained calmly, "My lord is short of manpower. The combat power of the women's camp is not weak. In times of emergency, it's fine as long as it's a soldier." Yang Si did not believe Wei Ci's words. He said, "I think your lord has a big ambition. Normally, if there was no goal, who would let a woman come to the front of the stage for no reason?" Yang Si's intuition was sharp, but he still could not figure out the trick behind it. Wei Ci smiled. "In the future, she will also be your lord." "You're confident." Yang Si did not think that he would truly acknowledge Jiang Pengji, even if her temper was indeed to his liking. Wei Ci smiled without saying a word. As time passed, the general outline of the buildings in the center of the district could be vaguely seen. The architectural style was the same as that of Xiangyang district. Yang Si had never seen something like green bricks. At most, he had heard about them from the refugees on the way here. Seeing that Chengan district was going to use green stones to pave the roads, green bricks to make tiles, and wide streets slowly taking shape in the ruins, he could not help but be speechless even though he was used to seeing rich people. Prince Changshuo's mansion used jade as the steps and the tiles were gilded. This was very normal. He was a member of the royal family. However, Chengan district was just a small district. At its peak, there were only 18,000 households. Jiang Pengji was just an ordinary aristocratic family, but she could generously pave the main streets and lanes of the entire district with green bricks. She could also pave the newly built houses with green tiles. Yang Si did not dare to think deeply about how much manpower, material resources, and financial resources were needed. What made his heart beat faster was that Maolin District and Jiaoping District were also in full swing. The progress was slightly faster than Cheng'an District. They're really rich. Yang Si sighed. Wei Si smiled and took out a glass tea set. He pointed at it and said, Jingrong should say that the north borderline is really rich. Looking at Yang Si's eyes that widened in shock, Wei Si smiled even more brilliantly. My lord did not rely on the power of her family. I don't know how much effort she has put in to get to where she is now. Although her temper is a little bad, she is indeed a wise lord who loves the people like her own children. Yang Si came back to his senses and swallowed nervously. His eyes could not help but drift towards the tea set. Previously, Prince Changsho had spent a lot of money to get a set of peerless treasures from the north. Yang Si was fortunate enough to see it once. The material was exactly the same as the glass tea set that Wei Si took out. Prince Changsho's set was not as good as Wei Si's. At that time, he was still lamenting that there was such a treasure in the world that was worth such a high price. Now, he felt his face hurt. Looking at Wei Si's attitude towards the tea set, he knew that it was definitely not worth such a high price. These. Could it be that your lord made them? Yang Si recalled the high price that Prince Changsho had charged. The corner of his mouth could not help but twitch. This was simply robbery. Yes, but she said that the market in the north borderline is temporarily saturated. There's no need to continue selling them. This year, she plans to let the caravans sell them to the 4 factions of Nanman or to countries like Zhongzhou, Beiyuan, and Xichang. At least, we can't bump into the north borderline, lest we get exposed. Yang Si stared at the cup in Wei Si's hand. His slender and fair fingers pinched the transparent and resplendent cup. One could not help but lament that the years were peaceful. Nonsense. How much is this thing worth? Yang Si questioned closely. You'll only know when my lord becomes your lord. Otherwise, my lord will not let them go. There was a smile on Wei Si's face. At this moment, there was a hint of slyness like a fox. Is freedom more important or curiosity more important? Jingrong, you have to consider carefully. There's still a lot of work to do today. We were just talking about everything and have wasted a lot of time. Wei Si took a sip of tea faintly. Then, he went to his desk and continued burying himself in his work. Chapter 542. It had been 2 to 3 months since the spring plowing. The weather was getting hotter and hotter. The government office was open every day, but it still felt unbearably hot. Zhang Pengji did not have so many concerns at all. She wore a simple and light brown dress every day. Her sleeves were rolled up to her shoulders and her trouser legs were rolled up to her thighs. Wei Si blushed inexplicably at the sight of her fair arms and thighs, which attracted Yang Si's strange gaze. Do you have ulterior motives for your lord? Yang Si wrote with his right hand while fanning himself with his left hand. Even so, he still felt that the clothes on his back had been soaked in sweat and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Wei Si's hand trembled. A discordant black line appeared on the originally neat and beautiful letter. He reluctantly put away the ruined letter. He looked calm, but in fact, even his fingers were trembling. Jingrong, what nonsense are you talking about? Si and my lord are both men. Yang Si pursed his lips. Prince Changsho had reared many boys and male pets. This person did not hide it from them. Having seen the dark side of the aristocratic families, Yang Si did not think that they all believed in the way of yin and yang. Otherwise, how could men be so popular? So what if I'm a man? Speaking of which, Zixiao is 22 this year, right? There are no beautiful wives or concubines in the backyard. Even if others don't say that you have an unspeakable secret, they will think that you are gay. This is normal. Yang Si said with a smile. Looking at Wei Si's change of expression in the hot summer felt as carefree as drinking a large bowl of ice water in the dog days. It's not a big deal if you admire your lord. Wei Si retorted, Jingrong is 29 years old, but she's still single. Yang Si said, I have high standards and look down on ordinary women. In the past, matchmakers came to my house and broke through the threshold, but I was unwilling. Wei Si choked and said, I have no intention of getting married. Yang Si saw that he looked a little worried and his heart softened a little. He was afraid that he would touch on Wei Si's sore spot. Are you still conflicted about that stupid 8 characters? At that moment, Jiang Pengji's voice suddenly came from outside the door. She said as she walked, "What stupid 8 characters? You're done with the government affairs. Why are you chatting so happily?" The corners of Yang Si's mouth twitched. Jiang Pengji had gone to Jiaoping district a few days ago to catch able-bodied men. When Jiang Pengji entered the room, the two of them saw that she was carrying 2 round green ball-shaped objects in her arms. Wei Si saw the things in her arms and asked in surprise, "Verdant sect green jade room?" Yang Si and Jiang Pengji were stunned. The audience in the streaming room was also stunned. A watermelon was a watermelon. What was the point of making it sound so artistic? Jiang Pengji did not know that watermelon had such a name, while Yang Si had never seen a watermelon before. Wei Si was stunned for a moment before he reacted. The watermelon, which was called the Green Jade Room by many aristocratic families who flaunted their culture, had yet to arrive from the western region. He remembered clearly that after the Zhang dynasty was founded, the small vassal states in the western region specially presented it to the emperor in order to please him. It tasted pretty good and was a good thing to relieve the heat in the hot summer. Later on, it even became a treasure for the commoners to become rich. Why did it appear now? So it has such a name, but I call it watermelon. It's quite easy to grow. We can consider planting some in Chengan district to store water and relieve the heat in summer. Jiang Pengji placed 2 large watermelons on the table, took out a dagger, and cut one of them in half. It had been chilled in the well water, and the flesh emitted cold air. I remember that this is only available in the western region. Wei Si said. Jiang Pengji cut the watermelon. The bright red flesh of the melon made people salivate. It's indeed from the western region. Uncle Gu travels north and south to do business. He likes to exchange for some rare and strange plants. Last year he gave me some. I planted it in the small garden of the district headquarters of Xiangyang district. I heard that it bore fruit. I ate one and it tasted pretty good. In fact, that was not the case. Jiang Pengji did not recognize the plants from ancient times at all. It was the audience in the streaming room who grew watermelons at home who told her about it. They taught her how to grow watermelons and things to take note of. After she memorized it, she passed the trick to the supervisor and let her take care of it. She went to Jiaoping district to handle some matters. When she heard Qiguan Rang's words, she hurried back to Xiangyang district and plucked a few and brought them over. Rare things were always expensive. Jiang Pengji wanted Fengyi County to recover quickly. The commercial development could not be weak. However, this kind of fruit could only be eaten to satisfy one's cravings. It could not be used as food. Even if it was planted, the quantity and the field had to be limited. If the commoners saw that growing watermelons was profitable, they all wanted to plant them. Who would plant food? What would they eat without food? Jiang Pengji thought about this and served the watermelon on the plate to the two of them. Zixiao, you can't eat too much. This thing is cold in nature. Just eat 1 or 2 pieces to satisfy your cravings, she reminded him. Yuan Xiatiao. Seeing watermelon, I want to eat it too. It's a natural watermelon. It's juicy and sweet. I really want to go downstairs and buy one. Xing Da Lao. I'm already holding half a watermelon. I'm eating it with a spoon. It's much better than eating it 1 piece at a time. The watermelons in the back garden of Xiangyang district were about 1.5 acres. She got someone to pluck them and send them to her subordinates as a reward. Holding a watermelon and nibbling on it in the summer could even improve one's irritation. Yang Si despised Jiang Pengji, but he had to admit that the food here was delicious. Even the summer fruits were unique. My lord, I have already ordered the laborers to dig a canal and cut enough bamboo according to your instructions. I have sliced them and exposed them to the sun. How are the new bricks in the brick kiln? They can already produce excellent finished products. Although they are not as solid as ordinary bricks, they won't break easily. The 3 of them nibbled on the watermelon while talking about business. The scene was too beautiful. The audience in the streaming room expressed their desire for more. Tumi Dalao. Thank you, streamer. I think the melon farmers this year are going to laugh. Because of the mystery of the streaming room and the gimmick of being able to cross dimensions, it led to many new industries. For example, watermelons appeared in the streaming room today. Perhaps the watermelons in the nearby fruit shops would be sold out. The effect of the advertisement was terrifying. Wouldn't the melon farmers laugh until their teeth could be seen? Jiang Pengji said, "I'm very relieved that you're doing things." Bamboo slices were placed on both sides of the canal. The new bricks that were baked were used to pave the canal. Since the end of spring, the weather had become hotter and hotter. There had not been a single drop of rain so far. Jiang Pengji's premonition was about to be confirmed. During this period, Jiang Pengji had mobilized almost half of the manpower to dig canals, reservoirs, and wells. Jiaoping District and Maolin District were also extremely busy. Everyone was preparing for the upcoming summer. Although the construction of the district had slowed down, it did not stop. The barren district that had been ravaged by the Tsing-Yi army began to exude an aura of prosperity. As long as the people's wills were united and their efforts were directed in one direction, almost nothing was impossible. Entering June, the weather was dry and hot. When the sun was strong, stray cats and dogs did not dare to stay outside for long. Chapter 543. The second prince's wife, Anyina, was the princess of the royal family of the 3 tribes in the northern borderline. She had married into the Dongqing royal family for the sake of the friendship between the two countries. Now that she had suddenly died and her body was buried in a hurry, it was a stark contrast to the scene when she had married into the royal family. The news was originally tightly covered up by the Dongqing royal family. However, Prince Changshu had planted a spy in Qinzhou, so he knew the news almost immediately. He was still worried that he could not conquer Qinzhou and ascend the throne. Anyina's sudden death was simply a stroke of genius. Prince Changshu almost could not hold back the ecstasy that gushed out from his heart. He could not stop rubbing his hands, and the smile on the corner of his mouth almost reached the back of his head. "Is this news true? Did Anyina really die suddenly?" he asked eagerly, but he secretly regretted it. Why didn't he think of using Anyina as a breakthrough point? If he had known earlier, he would have exposed the dirty things between Anyina, the 4th prince, Wuma Jun, and the other ministers. It was a royal scandal. Not only did the princess and her uncle have an affair, but she also hooked up with so many important ministers. She should have been executed secretly long ago. Prince Changshu had some dealings with the northern borderline. The 3 tribes in the northern borderline gave him benefits and convenience. He used his connections to cover Anyina's actions in Dongqing. He promised her straightforwardly. No matter what Anyina did, it was transparent and open to him. Anyway, it was the emperor of Dongqing, not him. Prince Changshu was happy to watch a good show. Lu Shi, that coward, had not reacted to the death of his daughter, Lu Huan. He did not even express any dissatisfaction with the Dongqing royal family. If Lu Shi could express some dissatisfaction and stand on Prince Changshu's side against the Dongqing royal family, Prince Changshu would have ascended the throne long ago. It was fine if Lu Shi did not help. Anyway, the battle situation had tilted in Prince Changshu's favor. As long as he waited patiently for a few more months, Qinzhou would collapse on its own. However, there was a major mistake on the battlefield at this time, causing the original advantage to be equalized by Qinzhou. The battle was in a stalemate. During this period, the troops in Qinzhou and Prince Changshu's troops had several battles and conflicts. However, both sides were in a stalemate, and no one could do anything to the other. Prince Changshu could only look at the emperor's throne in Qinzhou enviously. He was itching and scratching his ears and cheeks. They thought that the situation would continue. Who knew that Anyina, the princess consort, would die suddenly in Qinzhou? Anyina was the jewel of the royal court of the 3 tribes in the north borderline. She had died suddenly for no reason. Regardless of whether she had really passed away due to a serious illness or had other causes of death, the royal court of the north borderline would not let it go. This was also a good opportunity for Prince Changshu to seize the opportunity to gain the support of the north borderline. Prince Changshu's ambition was not small. All these years, he had a close relationship with the 3 tribes of the north borderline. If they were to cooperate now, they would definitely succeed. When the strategists and generals in the tent heard his idea, their countenances changed, turning green or purple. It was very unsightly. A rather old strategist stood up and bowed. "My lord, you mustn't do this. The 3 tribes of the north borderline have been coveting the land of Dongqing for a long time. In recent years, their combat power has increased. If we choose to cooperate with them now, It is tantamount to inviting a wolf into the house. The danger is too great. The general sitting at the head of the table also said in a low voice, "Yes, my lord, you mustn't agree to this." The royal court of the North Borderline had bad intentions when they married Princess Enchanting into the royal family of Dongqing. These years, I have also heard rumors that this princess has taken in many guests. She is indeed a slut who has messed up the imperial court. The Count of Zhenbei's residence was destroyed because of this slut. My lord, please reconsider. My lord, I agree. At this time, my lord, please reconsider. Once this wild wolf from the North Borderline is drawn in, it will be difficult to send it away. Think about how many people died with grievances when the 3 tribes of the North Borderline ambushed Chongzhou's Shangyu County. This blood feud. Most of the strategists and generals in the tent had an extremely bad impression of the 3 tribes of the North Borderline. This was only secondary. It was easy to invite them in, but difficult to send them away, not to mention that the 3 tribes of the North Borderline had been coveting Dongqing for many years. However, their opinions on this matter were not important. What was important was what Prince Changshou thought. Some officials who liked to curry favor saw that Prince Changshou looked unhappy and quickly stepped out. Don't worry, everyone. This matter may not be entirely a bad thing, a middle-aged man in a scholar's robe said. Everyone glared at him. Only Prince Changshou's eyes brightened slightly. He stopped the people around him from scolding and signaled for the man to continue speaking. With Prince Changshou's approval, the middle-aged man felt more confident. He had always liked to act arbitrarily. In the past, he had pretended to be polite and listened to the opinions of others seriously, but it was just an act. Now that he was only one step away from the throne of Dongqing, he had been stuck at this step for nearly a year. He was already so irritable that he could no longer pretend. The middle-aged man did not have much ability, but he was extremely good at observing people's expressions. He could accurately hit Prince Changshou's pulse. Continue speaking, Prince Changshou said. Everyone's face darkened. Only the middle-aged man's face exuded joy. He said, "The 3 tribes of the North Borderline are barbarians. All of them are people who eat raw meat and drink blood. Dongqing is a country of etiquette, so it has the responsibility to educate them. They are merely barbarians. After my lord has succeeded, you can just give them some rewards and send them away. If you can't send them away, you can also make some verbal promises." Full of bullshit. Everyone's face turned pale. Coincidentally, someone with a more extreme temper stood up and scolded the middle-aged man, calling him a vermin. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "My lord is a real dragon appointed by the heavens. He is destined to rule the world. Borrowing the power of the North Borderline is just following the will of the heavens. Promising some benefits to the 3 tribes of the North Borderline is also to seek greater benefits. The land of the North Borderline is the imperial land. Sooner or later, we can take it back. If we don't do this, do you have any other good ideas to successfully conquer Qinzhou?" Prince Changshou's face was calm, but his heart was already in turmoil. He was increasingly satisfied with and valued the middle-aged man. He wanted to promote him to the chief strategist and become the head of the literati in his tent. The middle-aged man continued, "Moreover, we can let the barbarians of the North Borderline take the lead and deplete their military strength." Nonsense. There's no point in working with them. Many people still wanted to persuade him, but when they saw Prince Changshou's expression, their ambitions immediately sank to the bottom. Some hot-tempered people directly stood up and scolded. Not only did Prince Changshou not quell the dispute, but he also stood on the middle-aged man's side. This made everyone's heart turn cold. The hot-tempered and courageous generals directly stood up and waved their sleeves to leave the main tent. What kind of **T was this? Seeing that many people left one after another, Prince Changshou's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He usually pretended to be polite and open-minded, but it did not mean that these people could behave atrociously in front of him. However, he still had some rationality. He did not immediately agree to cooperate with the North Borderline. Instead, he let the spies in Qinzhou continue to probe for information. Princess Enchanting was fine. Why did she suddenly die? Chapter 544. How did Enchanting die? Wu Ma Jun sneaked into the palace and ordered his trusted palace maid to pass a message to Hui Jun, asking her to come over. As soon as Hui Jun came over, He reprimanded and questioned her. Haha, what does it have to do with me how she died? If you're curious, you should ask someone else. Why would you ask me, a concubine in the palace? Hui Jun was dressed in a complicated palace dress. She was as beautiful as a painting. Even the fairies in heaven could not compare to her. She was like a delicate flower that became more and more beautiful. She could attract the souls of others just by standing there. Unfortunately, Wu Ma Jun was not in the mood to appreciate such beauty because he was furious. Wu Ma Jun had originally reprimanded Hui Jun. He wanted to hear the reason and find out more information. He did not expect her to say that. For a moment, Wu Ma Jun was so angry that his face turned red. He was so furious that he wanted to strangle Hui Jun. This solitude understands. You must have thought of a way to kill her, right? You ignorant woman. Do you know how important Enchanting is? As long as this woman is alive, I can get the power in her hands and overthrow that old bastard. But you... Hui Jun sneered and said, although it's daytime now, it's better not to daydream. How can you be so sure that I killed Enchanting without any evidence? She's the second princess and I'm your father's favorite concubine. According to our relationship, I'm considered Enchanting's elder. There's no conflict between us. Why would I want to kill her for no reason? Do you think it's because of you? Wu Ma Jun asked in return. Wasn't it because you knew about me and her and were jealous? That's why you killed her? Although he was completely despised by the emperor and was even kicked in the chest by the emperor, causing Wu Ma Jun to lie in bed for more than half a year, Wu Ma Jun did not think that he had no chance to ascend to the throne because he had cooperated with Enchanting and Prince Changsho. If he had planned it carefully, he might have already ascended to the throne. Who knew that bad luck would come one after another? First, Lu Huan gave birth to a pair of freakish babies in the palace. He was placed under house arrest by the emperor, and Lu Huan died from a hemorrhage due to dystocia. After Lu Huan died, he lost the support of the powerful Yu family. Then, Enchanting died suddenly, which cut off his connections in the north borderline. Now, without the support of these two parties, how could he negotiate a deal with the sly old fox Prince Changsho? How could Wu Ma Jun accept that the throne, which had been within his reach, was getting further and further away from him? After thinking about it, he felt that Hui Jun had something to do with Enchanting's death. Before Enchanting died, she had entered the palace to visit the Empress. Then, she went to Hui Jun's palace to talk to her for a while. After that, she died suddenly that night. This was the information he could find out. Based on the news alone, Wu Ma Jun's intuition told him that the death of Enchanting's wife was related to Hui Jun. That was why he took the risk to sneak into the palace, just to find out the truth. Hui Jun almost burst out laughing when she heard Wu Ma Jun's narcissistic words. Would she be jealous because of Wu Ma Jun and Frame Enchanting? What kind of melodramatic drama was going on in this person's mind? You can think whatever you want. Enchanting's death has nothing to do with me. If you don't believe me, then don't believe me. Hui Jun looked tired. She waved her sleeves and was about to leave. Wu Ma Jun was unwilling to let her go, so he was furious. In the end, he raised his hand and slapped her. An obvious five-fingered mark appeared on her fair and delicate skin. One side of her cheek was obviously swollen. Wu Ma Jun finally calmed down when he heard the loud sound and felt the numbness in his right palm. He slapped her so hard that Hui Jun's face was slapped to the side. She felt a slight metallic taste spreading in her mouth. She stuck out her tongue and licked the blood at the corner of her mouth. She did not cry. Instead, she revealed a coquettish smile and said miserably, "You useless man. You said you loved me the most, but you framed me with a groundless crime for a dead person just to appease the panic in your heart. Wu Ma Jun, you really have guts." She left angrily after she finished speaking. Wu Ma Jun was also shocked by his own actions. He stood rooted to the ground, and the look of despair and heartbreak in her eyes before she left echoed in his mind. He wanted to chase after her to apologize, but Hui Jun had already left. Oh no, I've hurt her this time. Could it be that she really didn't kill Enchanting? Wu Ma Jun muttered to himself with a remorseful look on his face. Hui Jun, who had left sadly, had a cold expression on her face. She dabbed some cosmetics on her handkerchief and applied it to her face. She realized that her body had become exceptionally healthy after she entered the palace. Her skin was so tender that it was easy to leave marks, but it healed quickly. Wu Ma Jun's slap had indeed stunned her. Her cheek was swollen, and she looked very miserable. However, Huijun knew very well that this kind of injury would disappear in 15 minutes at most. It would heal faster if it was combined with medicine. TSK. If Enchanting didn't die, I would be the one who died. Huijun muttered to herself in the bronze mirror after she sent the palace maid away. A determined and vicious look flashed in her eyes. Why did Enchanting die? It was because this woman had found out some information that she should not have. This information would cause Huijun to die a tragic death. Huijun was born in the slums of Shangjing. She was just a lowly prostitute who could be bullied by everyone. The Lu residents helped her conceal her identity. Logically speaking, it should be foolproof. However, Enchanting seemed to know about the past. Thinking of this, Huijun's face darkened. She recalled that day. Now that she thought about it, she still felt resentful. Enchanting entered the palace to talk to the Empress for a while with the excuse of congratulating the Empress on the Thousand Autumn Festival in advance. Then, she went to Huijun's palace. The first sentence she said made Huijun extremely frightened. Fortunately, she could control herself and did not show any unusual expression. Enchanting said, I know that you're just a lowly prostitute in Shangjing. Huijun's heart trembled, but she responded with a smile. What do you mean, Your Highness? I'm innocent. When did I become a prostitute? In fact, Enchanting did not have any concrete evidence. She knew some secrets, but she was not sure. Therefore, she chose this opportunity to trick Huijun. However, Huijun's reaction was too normal, which made Enchanting uncertain. She said, I'm afraid the imperial noble consort doesn't know yet, right? Your face is exactly the same as that of an imperial noble consort many years ago. The emperor doted on you so much because of your face. The imperial noble consort was extremely beautiful, but unfortunately, the heavens were jealous of her beauty. She died of illness at a young age. The emperor was heartbroken, and ordered to collect beauties who were somewhat similar to the imperial noble consort in order to remember her. All the officials from all over the country offered their gifts. Among them, there was a woman who looked very similar to her. However, this woman already had a husband and was 3 months pregnant. Enchanting smiled meaningfully when she said that. Huijun's expression had already changed slightly. Chapter 545. Enchanting continued. This woman was originally an ordinary village woman. In order to please the emperor, the local officials killed her husband and sent her to the palace when she was pregnant. Because of her face that resembled that of the imperial concubine, she was pampered by the officials for a period of time. Unfortunately, she violated a taboo and tried to compare herself to the late imperial concubine Wang. She died mysteriously. Along with the baby girl who was born in the palace, both mother and daughter disappeared. However, the information I've found is more than that. Is Imperial Gue Fei in the mood to listen? Huijun suppressed the restlessness in her heart and tried her best to calm her expression. This story is interesting. Tell me about it. Princess Consort Enchanting. I've been very bored these few days. It's good to kill time by listening to it. Her reaction was very calm, and there was not a single flaw in her. The more she was like that, the more suspicious Enchanting became. I spent a lot of effort and finally found the palace maid who served that woman back then and asked for some information. Enchanting said sarcastically, that woman broke a taboo and tried to compete for favor with Imperial Consort Wang, so she was detested by the officials. The emperor felt that this person was insatiably greedy and was not qualified to be compared to the high and mighty Gue Fei, so he threw her into the slums and demoted her to a prostitute. That woman became a prostitute. Every day, she had to welcome and send people off. How pitiful. Her daughter followed in her footsteps. Poor mother and daughter. Huijun's heart trembled. She had already guessed what Enchanting was going to say. However, she knew that if she admitted to this matter, she would probably die miserably. Therefore, Huijun's expression was natural. She used a handkerchief to wipe the tea stains at the corner of her mouth and said elegantly, It's indeed a story that makes one weep. Is the princess consort here to warn me not to overestimate myself and compete for favor with the late imperial consort Wang? Or could it be that he wanted this consort to know that his status was only because of his face that he was favored by the officials? If that's the case, then I appreciate it. Although Enchanting did not name anyone, she knew very well that the story was very likely to be true. Hui Jun was miserable, but she still had a gorgeous smile on her face. Yaina tried to probe her a few times, but she fended them off easily. Yaina had no choice but to ask meaningfully. Imperial noble consort, do you know where that woman's daughter went? Hui Jun said, since she's a low-class prostitute, she must have been tortured to death by others. Yaina secretly hated Hui Jun for her flawless defense. However, she did not have any concrete evidence and could not control Hui Jun. Yaina valued her influence on the emperor. If she could control Hui Jun, it would be easy to overthrow the entire Dongqing plan. The princes were already locked in a fierce battle, and Prince Changsha was still eyeing them covetously outside. If the emperor were to suddenly die at this time, Dongqing would fall into complete chaos. When their internal strife was almost over, the cavalry of the 3 tribes of the northern borderline would lead their troops to the south. They would be able to conquer Dongqing effortlessly. After Yaina left, Hui Jun sat on the spot for a while and ate 2 abortion pills that she had secretly hidden. She was pregnant, very early in the month. As a prostitute, she had a few accidental pregnancies and was forced to abort by her mother several times. She had long been infertile. However, ever since Lu Shi's Lang Jun performed the celestial technique on her, her body was getting better day by day. Her yin and yang were harmonized with a man's. Instead, it was like using yang to nourish yin. Her damaged reproductive organs had also recovered. A few days ago, she found out that she was pregnant. Hui Jun was very ruthless. She had never thought of giving birth to a child for the emperor. After listening to Yaina's story, it was even more impossible. Therefore, Hui Jun had a miscarriage. The reason was that she had eaten the snacks sent by Princess Yaina, which were mixed with a large number of abortifacients and blood circulation substances. The emperor was furious when he heard the news. Perhaps, the princess is worried that I'll give birth to Liner and obstruct her husband's path to power, she complained tearfully. The emperor was used to seeing her arrogant side, but he had never seen her so weak and pitiful. She felt pity for Yaina and the second prince, and she hated them to the core. Hui Jun insidiously provoked the emperor's most sensitive nerves. He was old, and his children coveted the throne. Now, he could not even tolerate the blood in the belly of the favored imperial noble consort. If that was the case, Yaina would not have died a sudden death. Hui Jun added fuel to the fire and revealed the filthy relationship between her and the 4th prince. She said, the second princess sees me as a thorn in her side. I'm afraid she's worried that I'll spill the beans in front of the emperor and expose the illicit relationship between her and the 4th prince. The emperor was a typical example of only the officials were allowed to set fires, but the people were not allowed to light lamps. He could fool around in chaos, but others could not. That night, Yaina died a sudden death. It was not that the emperor had not thought about the reaction from the north borderline, but it was nothing compared to his majesty as the emperor. The royal family of Dongqing wanted to hide the news, but they could not stop Prince Changsha from hindering them. The news of Yaina's sudden death quickly spread from Chenzhou. At the same time, a letter on a horse galloped north from Prince Changsha's military camp. It was already midsummer when the news reached Jiang Pengji. It was the hottest time of the year. She slightly lowered the recruitment standards and took her time to recruit soldiers. The female battalion was further expanded, and the number of soldiers reached 5,000, while the male battalion had 15,000. There were a total of more than 20,000 soldiers in the male and female battalions, which was not considered weak among the forces in the north. At the same time, she and a few strategists slightly improved the previously discussed method of farming. The original purpose of the method of farming was to deal with the problem of excess captives. There were not many captives at the moment, but the food shortage was imminent. After a few discussions, they decided to put the first batch of farming experimental plots in Cheng'an district for trial. The reason was simple. There was a lot of wasteland near Cheng'an district. The terrain was stable and open, and the built canals were relatively complete. If it was used as a trial experimental plot for farming, the effect would be better. For this reason, Jiang Pengji even transferred Li Yun, who was an expert in farming, from Maolin district. Because of the reservoir, canals, and a few newly dug wells, Cheng'an district was not very short of water. Li Yun rolled up his trousers and held a ceramic bowl to drink water in big mouthfuls. The cold water vapor slightly dispelled the high temperature caused by the exposure to the sun. When I went to see the fields today, a part of them split open. Fortunately, my lord has foresight. Otherwise, I don't know if I can drink water. After being exposed to the sun for a whole day, Li Yun's skin, which had taken a lot of effort to maintain a fair complexion, turned a few degrees darker. Yangtze sighed faintly. Fengyi County is fine, but the people in other places, I'm afraid they'll have a hard time. In this world, whether the people can live a good life or not depends on what kind of local officials they encounter. Jiang Pengji's personality was terrible, but Yangtze had to admit that with her around, the people's lives were indeed much better. Li Yun nodded in agreement. He wore an expression that said, "My lord is the best." Chapter 546. Yangtze snorted, "Women should just stay at home and take care of their husbands and children. Why should they go to the battlefield? There are men who protect the country. In my opinion, it's better to take advantage of this incident and disband the women's camp. If people don't appreciate it, it's because they don't know what's good for them." It wasn't that he looked down on women, but he felt that the world was already very difficult. There was no need to treat women so harshly. Li Yun shook his head disapprovingly and said, "I don't agree with Sir Jingrong's words. Just as my lord said, it's precisely because the world is difficult that people can't even take care of themselves. That's why women need to step forward. Whether it's to take care of their husbands and children or to protect the country, it's a personal choice. Some people like embroidery needles, naturally. There are also people who like to be armed and don't like to wear makeup. It should be respected." Yangtze's eyes slanted and he glanced at Li Yun. This naive idiot talked about these things clearly and logically, muttering endlessly. "Yun feels that my lord is doing the right thing. It's better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish. Instead of thinking of ways to protect women like fragile glass, it's better to teach them how to protect themselves. In today's world, many people can't even take care of themselves. How would they care about women who are seen as weak in the eyes of others?" Hearing the word glass, Yangtze couldn't help but think of a day when his student servant accidentally broke Wei Si's glass teacup. That thing was indeed very fragile. Rationally, Yangtze agreed with Li Yun's words. There was indeed nothing wrong with it. On his journey from the south to the north, he saw too many refugees. He saw a husband forcing his wife to become a prostitute, ignoring her cries and collecting money from passers-by. As long as he paid, he could do whatever he wanted with his wife. He saw a father selling his young daughter to a slave trader. His daughter cried at the side, and he fought with the slave trader just to get a few more copper coins. He saw a man trading his children for food, exchanging his daughter with others in exchange for human flesh to satisfy his hunger. The world was very unfair to people, and it was even more unfair to women among them. Yangtze shook his head and sighed. "Your lord is a person who has tender and protective feelings for women. But," he continued, "this is how the world is now. Even if your lord's intentions are good, the people are ignorant and stupid. They only have benefits in their eyes and greed in their hearts. Just like this time, wasn't your lord summoned back in a hurry because of this trivial matter?" Jiang Pengji established the women's battalion. The female soldiers could receive salaries. She opened a nursery and took in girls and babies who had been maliciously abandoned by their families. How many lives had she directly or indirectly saved? Would the world be grateful to her? In Yangtze's opinion, that might not be the case. She was probably going to get herself into trouble. Li Yun was disappointed, but there was nothing he could do. The people of the world are all fools. Bickering with a bunch of people who are as stupid as insects is really asking for trouble. Yangtze said sarcastically, "Female soldiers have already violated the customs and are inferior to male soldiers in all aspects. I really don't know what your lord is doing with this. He's doing this for the good of these female soldiers, but are they and their families willing to accept his kindness?" At this moment, Jiang Pengji was facing a group of insects in Yangtze's words. There were more than 10 people kneeling before her. There were boys who were less than 6 or 7 years old, and above them were old women who were in their 50s or 60s. Behind them were 2 neatly dressed female soldiers. Their heads were lowered and their expressions were blank. Jiang Pengji remembered these 2 female soldiers. A while ago, when the military camp was rewarded and the soldiers who performed well during the siege were promoted, these 2 female soldiers were among them. One of them was promoted to a centurion, while the other was in charge of the trivial matters of the logistics and medical troops. She was also an official. Coincidentally, these 2 female soldiers were beautiful sisters. According to Jiang Nongqin, these two were quite talented. She was preparing to train them well and promote them in the future. This time, she hurried back because of these two women. Jiang Pengji had already understood the situation when she arrived. Her gaze swept over the few people who looked somewhat mean. "You said that you want to take your daughter back and not stay in the women's battalion?" she asked. The oldest woman said, "Yes, I pity my granddaughter. She's old and it's time for her to get married so that it won't be delayed." Jiang Pengji snorted and said, "But I remember that these two sisters were the first batch to enter the women's battalion." At that time, there was a lot of discussion in the county. The people said that the women's battalion was a camp for prostitutes. "You sent them here and beat and scolded them on the way. Aren't you ashamed to say this now?" The old woman's face froze. She never expected that the district magistrate did not respect the old and cherish the young. She directly tore off the skin of their faces and threw it on the ground. What was the difference between this and pointing at someone's nose and scolding them? Filial piety is the most important of all virtues. "This old woman is their grandmother," Jiang Pengji said coldly. "I remember that I set up a law. Even if they are biological parents, they have no right to force their children to be prostitutes." There was a hint of killing intent in her eyes. Just by sitting there, she gave people a great deal of pressure. The audience in the streaming room also understood what had happened. They could not help but sigh. They felt sorry for Jiang Pengji and looked forward to the development of the plot. In this era, filial piety was more important than anything else. The streamer supported the female soldiers in the women's battalion. To a certain extent, it was against filial piety. Their families wanted the female soldiers to go back to get married and have children. If they did not go back, it would be unfilial. Jiang Pengji knew to respect the old and cherish the young, but she would not give face to others if they were shameless. "Don't say such empty words. Do you really think that I don't know what you are planning? Don't you see that your two daughters are promising, so you want to cling to them and suck their blood? Don't think that I don't know that you have taken away their salaries. Touch your conscience. Do you have the cheek to ask for this money? Forget it. They are just jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards. They are just animals. How can they be considered humans?" She scolded the people below her mercilessly and changed to a more comfortable position. "This time, I came to get my daughters married. How can it be a good marriage? Isn't it just for the betrothal gift of a dozen taels? If I marry my daughters at a high price and accept the betrothal gift, and my daughters have a promising future in the military camp, I won't do anything because of filial piety. Instead, I will continue to pay them every month. 2 daughters, one is a centurion, and the other is a medical officer. Their salaries are not low, and they will be higher in the future. You guys are really good at scheming. What pity that their daughters or granddaughters were old and no one wanted them. It was just for a dozen taels of silver. As the saying goes, one should not hit people in the face, and one should not expose people's shortcomings." Jiang Pengji stepped on where it hurt. "Old woman," the woman kneeling below her wanted to speak, but Jiang Pengji said impatiently, "Shut up. You have no right to speak here." Her good mood recently had been ruined by this family. It would be strange if she had a good temper. She turned her gaze to the 2 female soldiers and said, "Do you remember that before you entered the women's battalion, you signed a document?" The 2 female soldiers said, "I remember." Chapter 547. The 2 female soldiers were a pair of sisters. The older one was 17 and the younger one was 15. Apart from them, there was a 7-year-old brother. After the earthquake last year, Shangyang district was in the midst of reconstruction. To save some food, the family wanted to sell their 2 older daughters to a brothel. However, Jiang Pengji was renovating the place at that time. She was in a tight spot and they had no place to sell their daughters even if they wanted to. Later, they heard that sending their daughters to the women's camp would give them half a tael of silver as compensation, so they sold their daughters. With 1 tael of silver for the 2 daughters, the family could save 2 mouths to feed. As for their future, even though their mother was worried, she did not dare to show any abnormalities with her mother-in-law watching over her. Later, the 2 filial daughters secretly gave their monthly salary to their mother, hoping that she could hide it as her private money. That way, they could speak confidently at home. However, the mother had always liked to please her husband and mother-in-law. She would spill everything once she opened her mouth. Now, one of the two daughters was promoted to a centurion, and the other became a small leader of the medical troops. Their salary was also doubled from before. The family boasted about it everywhere. Very soon, a matchmaker came to propose marriage. The betrothal gift was very high. The engaged husband was in his early 30s. 2 wives had died. He had 4 children and his family was somewhat wealthy. He despised the women on the battlefield, but he liked the status of the female soldiers in the women's camp. He felt that it was easier to talk to someone in the army. As long as he could help his family, he would marry him and treat him like a god of wealth. The 2 families hit it off. Then, they made a scene at the women's camp. They wanted to drag their daughters back to get married. Jiang Nongqin stopped them and sent an urgent letter to Jiang Pengji at the same time. Perhaps it was Jiang Nongqin's rather good attitude that gave the unruly people confidence. They were also unreasonable and rude when facing Jiang Pengji. However, Jiang Pengji was not so easy to talk to. She immediately retorted. Her murderous aura alone was scary enough. Jiang Pengji chose to ignore the unruly people in a noble and cold manner. She had mixed feelings about the female soldiers. Tell me your choice. The older female soldier bit her lower lip. Her gaze was evasive. She stammered, I'll listen to you. Although the district magistrate promised that the female soldiers could set up a household after they retired at the age of 24 and that their children would follow their mother's surname, there was no such thing. Her mind was a mess, filled with the bombardment of words from her father, mother, and grandmother a few days ago. As soon as he said that, the viewers in the live stream exploded. Sang K. What the F***CK, there's something wrong with this person's brain. She's willing to marry a man who's old enough to be a father. Moreover, he's an old man with 2 dead wives and 4 children. Even the host said that he would support them. F***CK. Sai Poo. My lungs are going to explode. Do they not believe in the host? If I were a streamer, my heart would turn cold. Meow meow dada too. Don't be so angry. What's the use of scolding them? If it were me, I would go up and slap them. Akateris. Bah, do you still remember how the host trained those female soldiers? You're still beating people up? Be careful not to be killed instead. Shenyue Jidya. I can't take it anymore. My heart is about to collapse. Why doesn't the lady soldier want to believe in the streamer? Kneeling begging for monthly tickets. This is like stabbing a knife into the host's heart. She's now preparing to reveal her identity in the future. She has to vigorously support the female soldiers and let them walk on stage. Now, the lady soldier slapped the host in the face. This is too much. Jiang Pengji was not as upset as the viewers in the live stream thought. In fact, she was very calm. Yes, she was too calm. Feng Jin looked at Jiang Pengji worriedly and sighed in his heart. If the women's camp was not Jiang Nongqin's territory, he really wanted to overstep his authority and solve this problem before Jiang Pengji returned. He understood her temper. She would not be at a disadvantage at all. If she suffered a small loss, she would definitely seek revenge 1,000 times over. Jiang Pengji calmly moved her gaze away and fell on her younger sister. She asked, What about you? Like your sister? This female soldier was a centurion. According to Jiang Nongqin, she trained very hard every day. Others were resting, but she was still training. During the siege, her arm was shot by a stray arrow. She gritted her teeth and pulled the arrow out. She stopped the bleeding hastily and continued to fight. She was very stubborn. Jiang Nongqin secretly wanted to train her as the deputy captain of the women's camp. The female soldier looked at Jiang Pengji anxiously. Her grandmother secretly stared at her as if she could eat her up. I don't want to. I don't want to marry and have children like my sister. She said in a panic, Didn't the district magistrate promise that female soldiers can retire at the age of 24? Their household registration will be independent, and their children can follow their mother's surname? Therefore, I don't want to marry. Compared to being pinched by her grandmother at home, she preferred to fight with knives, spears, swords, and halberds. Only then did she feel that she belonged to herself and was free. Jiang Pengji suddenly smiled and said, I know. I will naturally do what I promised. You wicked girl. Are you trying to anger me to death? The old woman ignored the situation and reached out to pinch the girl's waist. She had thick and long white nails. If she pinched her flesh, it would be extremely painful just thinking about it. Pa! The transparent glass was thrown to the ground. The broken pieces splashed all over the ground. The old woman was so shocked that her eyelids twitched. Jiang Pengji turned her head and asked Feng Jin, "What's the punishment for attacking a soldier in public?" Feng Jin answered, "She should be flogged 3 times. Jiang Pengji said, "Yes, write it down." She waved at the young female soldier and gestured for her to sit in the lower seat. Jiang Pengji said calmly, "A country has its laws and a family has its rules. The military camp is a place of strict discipline. You know what kind of place the women's camp is. When you send your daughter here, do you remember to sign a document? The document clearly states that female soldiers under the age of 24 are not allowed to get married or get pregnant. Those who violate this rule and incite them to do so will be flogged 100 times and executed in public. If a female soldier insists on marrying, she will be expelled from the military and will never be employed again." This time, the faces of the people who were kneeling below changed. The older female soldier's face was even paler. "As for you, you're very good. You didn't disappoint the captain of the women's camp." She looked at the younger female soldier. "You've reminded me of something. It's true that I've neglected this matter. You're not even 20 years old. It's still a bit early for you to get married. However, the matter of the household registration should be dealt with. From now on, all female soldiers in the women's camp will have their household registration removed from their original household registration and set up their own household." In Jiang Pengji's eyes, people were people. As long as they could be used, it didn't matter if they were men or women. In her eyes, those who could not be used by her were no different from trash. Jiang Pengji said coldly, "Why you execute according to the contents of the contract for the women's camp. There's no need to talk nonsense with them." Feng Jin sighed. He knew it would be such a situation. Not to mention 100 floggings, the bodies of these people would suffer from 12 floggings. He said, "Yes, my lord. I just don't know, who is the main instigator?" Chapter 548. Who was the instigator? Whoever dared to stand up and admit it would be punished with 100 strokes. Wouldn't they be crippled if they were hit? It would be fine if they were crippled, but they might lose their lives. For a moment, the blood drained from the faces of the people kneeling below. Except for the 7-year-old boy who still looked confused, everyone else was sweating profusely and trembling. The old woman's eyelids rolled back and she fell to the ground, looking like she was out of breath. Feng Jin was surprised. Feng Jin was astonished. If this old lady was really scared to death, it would definitely affect his lord's reputation. The old woman's son, daughter, son-in-law, and daughter-in-law all looked distressed and panicked. The whole hall was noisy. Jiang Pengji leaned against the table and watched the emotional performance of these people coldly. The audience in the streaming room was still filled with righteous indignation. But after the old woman fainted, someone jumped out to accuse Jiang Pengji of being cold-blooded. Lowly Wan Sui, "Oh my God, someone is going to die. Although this family is indeed a bit outrageous. Isn't there something wrong with what you're doing, host? If you really scared someone to death, let's see how you deal with it. A bunch of cold-blooded animals." San Yen Xingjing. The values of this streaming room are so bad. There are violent and bloody elements. Why hasn't the country banned it yet? Sanpai Shudiozo. It can't be banned. It's being streamed on all online platforms. It's as pervasive as a virus. Unless all the streaming platforms are closed and the internet is cut off, maybe this streaming room can be completely banned. But do you think that's possible? Death sentence Bugue. This streaming room is so bloody. Minors can't control themselves and commit crimes after watching it. They want to teach bad things to children. If one day someone really commits a crime according to the streaming room's practices, it'll be too late. It wasn't the first time Jiang Pengji had been cursed by the audience for 18 generations. She didn't care. Their mouths belonged to them. She couldn't control what they wanted to say. If they could really face her ancestors, who would dare to open their mouths and say a word? She sneered and asked them in return. Host V, I think death sentence is not a bad thing. This person has taught me how to write erotic stories about Lolis. Why, did you rape a girl? She could remember clearly which ID had said what and when in her live broadcast room. Jiang Pengji mercilessly dug up the audience member's past. Trying to play double standards with her? He had to make sure that he was clean first. Some of the viewers in the streaming room criticized her, but most of them supported Jiang Pengji. After all, they were old viewers who had followed her for many years. They knew that Jiang Pengji would not speak without thinking. Moreover, this matter was related to the dignity of the women's camp. If they didn't handle it well and didn't follow the rules of the military camp, who wouldn't come over and drag their daughter away to get married? More importantly, was this marriage really for his daughter's sake and not to sell her for a good price? In short, Jiang Pengji was setting up a female battalion, not a premarital training class for unmarried women. If he wanted to take advantage of her, he would have to see if his body could withstand 100 beatings first. The people below rushed to the old woman's side and wept bitterly. The older female soldier was horrified. The fear and worry of being expelled from the army were also suppressed. She was more worried about the old woman's safety. If something happened to her grandmother, wouldn't the family blame her? Just as her parents said, they were her blood relatives. They would definitely do it for her own good. Why would they harm her? Feng Jin looked at Jiang Pengji awkwardly. The younger female soldier was also very flustered at first, but she calmed down very quickly. She was used to seeing this grandmother act shrewdly and make jokes. If she couldn't make a fuss, she would pretend to faint. The word unfilial could break a person's spine. Looking at her face, it was rosy and clean. Where was the paleness and weakness that a fainted person should have? My lord, this, Jiang Pengji snorted. It seems that no one will stand up and admit that they are the instigators. Then I will judge. This boy is only 7 years old. I think he can't instigate his elder sister, so he will be exempted from the punishment. This old woman is really hateful. She doesn't educate her children strictly. 10 beatings. The others will share the remaining 90 beatings. Drag him away to be beaten. That female soldier will be expelled from the army and will never be employed again. She pretended to faint in front of her. She thought she was blind. The old woman still did not wake up. She said, "This old woman tried to attack the soldiers before. She should be punished with another 3 beatings. In addition, she pretended to faint in front of me. That's another crime. She should be punished with another 10 beatings. There will be a total of 23 beatings. Just do as you see fit. Don't be frugal." Feng Jin said, "Yes, my lord." He called the guards outside the door and dragged the people away to be punished with beatings. The older female soldier resisted subconsciously. Fortunately, the gods were prepared and she was the first one to be dealt with. Even so, one of the guards' arms was injured. Jiang Pengji snorted mockingly when she saw the situation. What's the use of being strong in martial arts? She's already so cowardly. It's no wonder that anyone can step on her. The older female soldier's martial arts were not weak. She could at least deal with 3 to 5 strong men. However, when her family forced her to marry a man who could be her father and become the stepmother of a man who was older than her, she still agreed miserably. Jiang Pengji was not very kind. She gave them a chance, but they did not appreciate it. No matter what happened to them in the future, they should not blame her. The old woman was dragged out by the guards. She finally could not pretend anymore. She kicked her legs and cried, rolling on the ground. The audience who spoke up for the old woman felt their faces turn red. It was not because they were embarrassed, but because they had been slapped in the face. The older female soldier tried to kneel down to plead for mercy and appease the old woman. Instead, she was slapped on the face, leaving 5 bloody marks. As mentioned before, the old woman had thick and long nails. She did farm work all year round. Her strength was greater than many young and strong men. Even though the female soldier was well trained, she was slapped and rolled on the ground. Her right cheek quickly swelled up. Even her teeth were loose. "You jinx. God damn it, someone's going to die. You're riding 1,000 men, you're king with 10,000 men. If I knew you were such a rotten thing, I should have fallen to my death as soon as I was born. Ouch. Old man, why did you go so early? You left me alone to be bullied by these animals and women whose conscience has been eaten by dogs." The older female soldier opened her eyes wide in astonishment. She could not believe that these words came from her grandmother's mouth. The old woman refused to get up with all her might. She kept cursing and swearing, and everyone felt that her words were dirty to the ears. Jiang Pengji raised her hand and touched her forehead. She said coldly, "Take her away. Don't show any mercy. Flog her as many times as you deserve." The group of guards heard the anger in Jiang Pengji's tone. They secretly cursed the old woman for asking for trouble. Then they each took one side of her and dragged her out by force. The old woman also tried to scratch the guards' arms with her nails. Soon, a few bloody marks were left. The guards grimaced in pain. They did not know how an old woman who was almost 50 years old could have such great strength. Chapter 549. My lord, you're really naughty. Feng Jin was speechless, but he couldn't do anything about it. After all, only when his lord was happy could the people under her lead a happy life. I know that gossip is a fearful thing. Beating an old man will attract criticism. However, the rules of the military camp are like this. If I show mercy today, will anyone be able to come and make trouble? Old people should be more reasonable. Should I indulge such shameless old people? Feng Jin naturally knew the importance of punishing the chicken to warn the monkey. If he didn't get rid of the stick that stuck out, it would be difficult to clean up in the future. Jiang Pengji glanced at the younger female soldier. Seeing that she was a little worried, she felt even more satisfied. She said, "You should be glad that you and your sister made a completely different decision. Otherwise, the rest of your lives will be over." Seeing that Jiang Pengji was talking to her, the female soldier quickly restrained her worry for her sister. She lowered her head to the Lord and listened attentively. The audience in the streaming room came back to their senses and understood the other meaning of Jiang Pengji's words. Hide and seek cat baby. I just remembered that this family obviously doesn't treat this pair of sisters as family. They treat them more like goods. Thinking about the old woman's curses just now, it's not an exaggeration to say that they're enemies. Just as the streamer said, so what if they have fighting skills? The female soldier's skills to resist the guards were really beautiful, but her heart collapsed and she couldn't stand up at all. Now that she's been removed from the military and will never be employed again, the family will torture her. Fortunately, her sister is smart and not stupid, Unhuan City. To be honest, I'm quite unhappy with this female soldier's behavior. The streamer said that she'll support her. She should know what kind of people her family is, but she still chooses to be submissive. According to this development, I think her ending won't be good if she goes home and marries someone. How can it be good? The husband's family saw her position in the military camp and married her to be useful. Now that she's been removed from the military, she'll become an ordinary civilian. This marriage will definitely fall through. Even if it doesn't fall through and she marries into someone else's family, she'll be tortured to death. Twilight sunset. That's why the streamer said that the younger sister is smart and not as stupid as her sister. His younger sister was still in the military camp, and she was still a centurion. Although she was not a high-ranking official, it was already very powerful for ordinary people. With her younger sister supporting her in the military camp, no matter how difficult her life at home was, she should be able to survive. If her younger sister was also stupid. Hee. The viewers in the live stream knew what he was going to say even without him saying it. If her younger sister did the same thing and was removed from the military, she would lose her position as a centurion. When they returned home, they would just be obedient daughters who should be unconditionally filial to their families in the eyes of others. Their families would do whatever they wanted to them, including buying and selling. He recalled how the old woman had scolded her granddaughter. He directly said that his granddaughters were used by thousands of men. What kind of good ending would they have when they returned home? Only then did the young female soldier understand the deeper meaning of Jiang Pengji's words. Her eyes were slightly red, and she was worried about her sister's future. Jiang Pengji saw through her and said, "If you're really worried about your sister, try your best to do your part. The stronger you are, the better off she will be at home. If you're not strong enough to make your family flatter you, she'll only be humiliated." The female soldier bit her lower lip and plucked up her courage to plead for her sister. "My lord, my sister is actually..." Jiang Pengji interrupted her and said, "In the face of such a situation, the smartest thing to do is to remain silent. This is the best for your sister. The women's battalion is indeed a little rebellious in today's world. It's not tolerated by the secular world." The female soldier lowered her head even more after hearing that. As the first batch of female soldiers in the women's battalion, She had also experienced the days when she was ridiculed and misunderstood by others. Jiang Pengji acted as if she did not see her reaction. If you want to really stand up and let the women's battalion be accepted by everyone, you can't even take a wrong step. If I side with your sister, what will happen to the rest of the women's battalion? The military camp is a place where words are final. If orders are changed all the time, what will become of it? Don't think that only your family is the smartest in the world. Who knows how many people are secretly scheming the same thing as them? Do you know what it means to kill a chicken to warn the monkeys? Your sister and your family are chickens that will be slaughtered to warn the monkeys. In other words, if Jiang Pengji could not handle this matter perfectly, the women's battalion would really become a premarital training class in the future. Of course. She suddenly laughed. The coldness in her tone made one's hair stand on end. If you don't control yourself and lose your mind, you'll also be among the chickens that will be slaughtered. There are many talents in the world, but there are only so many opportunities. There are too many monks and too little porridge. If your sister doesn't want to seize the opportunity, naturally, there will be others who will covet it. Do you think I'm right? The female soldier listened and broke out in a cold sweat. It was still midsummer, where it had not rained for a long time, but she felt as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. At the same time, a sense of relief rose in her heart. According to her understanding of those relatives, if the two sisters did not have anyone to rely on, they might really be driven to death. However, when she thought of her sister, who was supposed to be in high spirits, she could not help but feel sad. On the other side, the family put on a good show. The old woman had to endure 23 strokes of the cane, but when she saw the wooden stick that carried out the punishment, she almost fainted from fear. Because the punishment was carried out in public, there were naturally many onlookers. It was said that the family of the female soldier wanted to take their children back to get married, but due to the original contract, if they wanted to do so, the instigator would have to suffer 100 strokes in public, and the female soldier would also be removed from the military. This made many people's hearts tremble. Just as Jiang Pengji said, the family of the female soldier was not the only shrewd people in the world. Others more or less began to have ideas about their daughters. So what if they entered the women's battalion? They were still their children. If their parents asked their daughters to get married, would they dare to rebel? However, when they heard that the punishment was 100 strokes and that the girls would also be removed from the military, many people gave up on this idea. If they were removed from the military, they would lose money. It would not be enough even if they paid for it. How could they help their families? Not to mention the 100 strokes of the cane. After a dozen strokes they would go to hell. Everyone cherished their lives. Who would dare to commit a crime against the law? The onlookers gave up on the idea of tricking their daughters, but they did not stop watching the show. Some even boasted that they were smart and were proud of themselves. If they did not resist the greed in their hearts, they might be the ones who would be stripped of their pants and thrown on the ground to be spanked. When the old woman saw this scene, she knew that she could not escape today. She cried, made a fuss and screamed. She pinched her granddaughter's arm with her right hand, almost twisting a piece of her flesh off. When the bystanders saw that the area quickly turned purple and black, they could not help but rub their arms. Oh my, this strength! Is she an enemy? Chapter 550. After beating her granddaughter, the old woman vented her anger. Her hair was messy, and her clothes were dusty from rolling on the ground. She cried to the guard who was carrying out the punishment, "Sir, how can I take 23 strokes? Old man, why did you leave so early?" The guard spread his hands helplessly, with an expression that said, "I can't make the decision." The Lord also said that your son, daughter, son-in-law, and daughter-in-law can take the punishment on your behalf. The expressions of the old woman's children changed. The two daughters-in-law shrunk their necks, and the son-in-law looked up at the sky. The few of them had shared out the 90 floggings. If they were to share out the old woman's 23 floggings, would they be able to survive? The old woman was reminded by the guard. She pointed at one of her daughters-in-law and said in a sharp voice, "It's all because of you. You gave birth to two losers and brought so much trouble to the whole family. You take the punishment, or I'll ask my son to divorce you." The woman who was pointed at turned pale, and her body was on the verge of collapse. At this time, the female soldier who was beaten finally regained her senses. She sneered and said, "My mother has a child in her belly. She can't take the punishment." Grandma, didn't you say 2 days ago that my mother was going to give me a younger brother? You know she has a child in her belly. The guard was surprised and looked at the weak woman with shrunken shoulders. If she is pregnant, she can't be beaten. In other words, there was one less person to share the 90 strokes. The old woman had to find someone else to take the 23 strokes. The old woman's face turned red. The discussions of the onlookers came into her ears. What a vicious old woman. She knows that her daughter-in-law is pregnant, but she still wants her daughter-in-law to take the punishment for her. Tisk, tsk. I'm her neighbor. We live in the same courtyard. I didn't expect this family to be so unreasonable. I heard that their 2 daughters are in the women's camp. One is more promising than the other, and their monthly salary is subsidized to the family. Their family lives are the best in the courtyard. I was so envious of them. Looking at it now, this family didn't have any good fortune. The daughter is trying to climb up, but the whole family is holding her back. Old shrew. She's so vicious. Isn't she afraid of getting even with the king of hell? If my daughter is so good, I'll wake up laughing in my dreams. It's a pity that he's a sickly invalid. How can he go on the battlefield to kill the enemy and make contributions? Some people just don't know how lucky they are. They don't know how to cherish the blessings that others can't ask for. It's really unfair. Tisk tsk, you guys don't understand. This was called being short-sighted and blind. You can only see that your daughter can be sold at a high price in exchange for a hefty betrothal gift, but you can't see how much benefits your daughter can bring to the family in the future. You're so short-sighted. Tisk tsk. During the previous siege, regardless of whether they were deployed to fight in the war or stayed behind to defend Xiangyang district, the female soldiers who performed outstandingly and made contributions were all rewarded. Some were promoted in status, while others were rewarded with money. The 2 female soldiers in this family had both. When the news came out, many people were envious of them, but the family just had to seek death. Some smart and quick-witted people would call their daughters dearly and try their best to repair their blood relationship, hoping to get the protection of their daughters. Only such a stupid and greedy person would do something as stupid as killing the goose that laid the golden eggs. The old woman heard the people around her discussing. All of them accused her family of being greedy and stupid, but no one stood up to speak for them. She was stunned and her mind went blank. When she heard others say that they were short-sighted, she cried even harder. We're also blinded by lard. We're all deceived by the black-hearted iceman. The old woman opened her mouth and was ready to push the blame to the matchmaker. It was the matchmaker who instigated them to harm their daughter. However, everyone knew in their hearts that if this family was not greedy and black-hearted, how could the matchmaker persuade them? The guards were already impatient, and the surrounding people jeered, wanting to see them beaten. The family was scared and panicked. The father of the female soldier raised his hand and wanted to beat his wife. Who asked this woman to give birth to 2 scoundrels? One side of the female soldier's cheek was already swollen, and her arm was covered with black and blue pinch marks. She looked very pathetic. Seeing that her mother was about to be beaten, she raised her hand to stop her father's raised arm and pinched the vital part of his wrist. This would make one's bones hurt. I'll bear the punishment for mother's punishment. The others will be punished according to the rules. Her mind cleared up a little, and she made a decision that was not considered stupid. She could not bear the reputation of being unfilial, so she took the initiative to bear the punishment for her mother. It was only 7 or 8 strokes. If she didn't do anything, the old woman might react and force her to bear the 23 strokes of the board. 7 or 8 or 23 strokes. Even a fool would know which to choose. The old woman reacted and pointed at the female soldier, asking her to bear the punishment. After all, she was her granddaughter. What was wrong with taking a few strokes for her grandmother? The guard smiled and said, "Granny, your granddaughter is very filial. She has already taken the initiative to bear 8 strokes for her mother. If she bears 23 strokes for you, she will lose her life here. You're a grandmother. You don't want to force your granddaughter to death, do you?" The old woman's face turned red, then green, and finally black. Her granddaughter took the initiative to bear the blame for her mother. She was a filial daughter, and as a grandmother, it would be unkind if she continued to push the blame. The guard added, "She is a girl after all. She is still young. If she is beaten too much, it will be bad if she can't have children in the future if she gets hurt." Granny has a few sons and sons-in-law. They are men, so it's not a big deal for them to take a few more strokes. The crowd jeered. Men were afraid of being spanked? The guard wanted to say something, but his companion winked at him, indicating that if the matter was dragged on for too long, the person in charge would be unhappy. Seeing this, the guard waved his hand and asked people to beat them one by one according to the rules. According to the rules, people who were punished in public had to take off their pants and be beaten on a high stool. The men were fine, but when it came to the daughters-in-law and daughters, they cried and screamed. The god gloated. "You're all men. Why don't you take the punishment for your wife? We'll try to be gentle." The common people were convulsing with laughter and egging him on. "Yes, you're a man, but you let your wife take off her pants to be beaten? Try to be gentle, but it still hurts." The man who was beaten 8 times on the ground was furious, and he scolded his wife. "Stinky woman, you want to see me die so you can remarry, right? Can a few strokes kill me?" No matter how unwilling the old woman was, she was beaten 10 times in the end, and the remaining 13 strokes were shared among the younger generation. Originally, the younger generation was unwilling. Even the youngest son whom the old woman doted on the most couldn't help but hide far away when he heard this. In the end, they pushed each other and barely shared the 13 strokes, but the old woman still had to take 10. When it was the female soldier's turn, the guard said, "She came from the women's camp after all, and we've guarded the city together. You don't have to take off your pants." The female soldier's face was pale and she murmured, "Thank you." There was a trick to beating someone. Wherein how much strength was used, there was something fishy about it. The female soldier was beaten badly, but the guard showed mercy. She would recover in a few days. Chapter 551. Is the fight over? Zhang Pengji asked the guard who was kneeling below. Her eyes were indifferent. The guard said, "The execution has been completed. Well, you may leave." Zhang Pengji sighed. She felt that she should strengthen the ideological education of the female soldiers. She originally wanted to influence them subtly, but now it seemed that it was not possible. She had to use a violent method. Let the female department of the government office write down the cause and effect of this matter and post it on the city wall. Try to describe it from a fair point of view. Don't mix personal emotions and opinions. Since she wanted to punish the chicken to warn the monkey, she could not easily let go of this opportunity. She also needed to expand the scope of the news and let all those who had such evil thoughts give up on these ideas as soon as possible. She did not want to receive similar news tomorrow or the day after. It was simply terrible. The army was the weapon of the country. Once they entered the army camp, they should focus on the overall situation and act according to the military law. However, the current situation of the society was that clan and blood ties were the most important. Even the country could be put aside. The audience in the streaming room felt that it was ridiculous for the people to drag their daughters back to get married. In fact, it was very normal. They regarded their children as private possessions. It was the parents' right to deal with them. Didn't they see that selling their children was the norm? Not to mention her society. Even in the society of the audience in the streaming room, was it not illegal for parents to sell their children? But in this society, all the behavior of parents towards their children was allowed and legal. It could not be considered a crime at all. It was not even wrong. "Why you, help me write a notice," Zhang Pengji said. Feng Jin asked, "About the household registration of the female soldiers?" "Yes, it is indeed about this matter. I was muddle-headed before and did not consider the overall situation. Compared to the promise I gave to the family of the female soldiers, they are naturally more willing to believe in their family. Otherwise, the female soldier just now would not have been so easily persuaded. It is still too early to get married, but the household registration can be put on the agenda. At least let them see my determination, lest they have worries and let their imagination run wild." She did not need to check to know that there must be a lot of messy voices in the female camp now, which would shake the stability of the army. It was actually a good thing that the family came to make trouble. It was ready-made material to punish the chicken to warn the monkeys. Zhang Pengji could use this excuse to beat down those who had disloyalty and appease the hearts of the people in the female camp. If the army's morale was lax, it would be difficult to lead the troops. Feng Jin was stunned for a moment and then immediately nodded. "I will do it now," Zhang Pengji said. "Thank you." Based on Feng Jin's attitude in the past, it was obvious that he did not support the female battalions and women in politics. Otherwise, they would not have maintained a simple friendship in the beginning. If not for the earthquake in Dongqing, Feng Jin might not have been willing to help her sincerely. After all, she was a woman. Feng Jin suddenly smiled. "You're being too serious, my lord." The news of the female soldier sisters quickly spread. Many people who didn't have time to make a scene were frightened. If they were a step faster and wanted to sell their daughters in the women's camp, they would be the ones who would be beaten up. That was a total of 100 paddles. There were many people in the family, so they wouldn't be beaten to death. But for those with fewer people, wouldn't someone die? Some rejoiced, some mocked, and some gloated. What happened to the female soldier sister was a wake-up call for everyone in the women's camp. It was also a wake-up call for their families. After entering the military camp, one could not get married or get pregnant before the age of 24. Violators would have to bear the punishment of 100 strokes and a fine of varying amounts. When Jiang Pengji clearly stated this rule, naturally, no one dared to make a fuss. She knew the principle of giving a carrot after a stick. In order to appease the people in the women's camp, she announced that she would start to deal with the matter of the independence of the female battalion's household registration. In this era, the military registration was a notch lower than that of a commoner. Daughters from good families were not willing to marry soldiers. However, the military registration that Jiang Pengji set up was different. The compensation and various arrangements for the orphans and family members after the war were very perfect. Soldiers of different ranks could receive different salaries. There was even a certain discount in the purchase of land and houses. If the officers and soldiers unfortunately died in the war, their family members and orphans could be properly arranged. If they were disabled due to the war, the government would arrange a job for them to make a living. If they were too seriously injured and could not do physical labor, the government would also allocate a certain amount of subsistence to ensure their livelihood. For such families, the family members could receive additional care, such as a certain discount for their children's schooling or a reduction in the tax on the land. Jiang Pengji listed out all the contents that she could think of. Then, she asked the people in the government office to modify and amend these regulations. Feng Jin looked at these and was stunned for a long time. When he returned home, Wei Jingxian carried Chongqing and fed her. Seeing her husband's face full of shame, she could not help but say a few words of concern. Feng Jin said, "I'm just ashamed. Lanting's boldness and ambition are indeed so shameful that I have no place to show my face." Post-war compensation. Throughout history, very few people mentioned it. Soldiers did not have anyone to rely on when they went to war. Otherwise, why would the people panic when conscription was mentioned and treat them like wolves and leopards? After all, there were only a few people who made contributions. Most people still died in the war in obscurity or were left with lifelong disabilities and no one to take care of them. Those with a bit of conscience would give some compensation, but they would always be exploited. In the end, they would only get a few copper coins. If there was no conscience, they would not give anything. The child that they had raised for more than 10 years would die in vain. That was why there was a saying that good men do not become soldiers and good women do not marry soldiers. Wei Jingxian listened to Feng Jin's narration. After a while she muttered, "This is a huge expense. Can Lanting support it?" Feng Jin shook his head. "She said that we have to support it even if we have to live frugally. It's fine if the officers and soldiers bleed on the battlefield, but we can't let them cry after the war, right?" Lanting's words were crude, but the truth was not. If it can be implemented, she can completely control the morale of the army and build an elite army that no one can defeat. Everyone knows the truth, but she is the only one who has the courage to do it. Jiang Pengji's territory was not big at the moment, but she had a private treasury. These benefits were nothing. However, when she started to conquer the world in the future, the number of people in her territory would increase day by day. The burden would be heavy. Post-war compensation was not something that could be solved in one go. 1 or 2 days were nothing, but how much of a burden would it be if it was a few years, a decade or even decades? She had the courage to bring it up. Looking at the detailed regulations, it was obvious that it was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. It should be the result of thinking for a long time. Wei Jingxian sighed and suddenly lowered her head to tease Chongqing, who was looking at them eagerly. She teased, Lanting. Even though I know she is a woman, I still feel a little moved." Feng Jin's face darkened. Jealousy bubbled in his heart. Madam, you're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.